that says the developed world and Western nations will help to fund the just transition from a high carbon economy to a low carbon economy. His withdrawal would have implications for the US's own reduction of its own emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, but certainly its participation in this bigger scheme around, trying to curb greenhouse gas emissions around the world. Then you talk about PEPFAR. This is the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. He did not sign an executive order, as far as I understand, on Monday regarding PEPFAR, but it is due for reauthorization in March this year. And with Trump and the Republicans controlling Congress the way that they do, you'll remember that it was authorized by Congress for 1 year, and this happened last year. And the conservatives in Congress in the United States claimed that some grant recipients promote abortion. Now, this is an important fund in South Africa. I can tell you that now, that PEPFAR has been quite important in our response to HIV and AIDS. Can't remember the figure off the top of my head right now, but I think a few months ago when I spoke to the health minister, he did give me a figure of how much PEPFAR contributes to our HIV/AIDS response programs. So that's what I'm talking about the global impact of the choice that Americans have made. And I appreciate that there are people who say, good for Americans. And I've heard some go as far as to say that actually we might need someone like a Donald Trump in South Africa that will put South Africans first. That's great. But now these are the consequences in terms of what's happening at a global level. There's talk about taking back the Panama Canal from Panama. He's saying it's changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And in fact, he signed an executive order to that effect. Weigh in for me, please. What's your appreciation of the global impacts, the South African impacts, African impacts of the choice that Americans have made for themselves? Give me a call, the number to dial 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. I've also been thinking a bit about the payment of service providers by government and other organs of state, right? And in this context, I'm talking about the service providers that provide accommodation for students who are on the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. They are but the latest to complain about not being paid on time. They're saying that they want to be paid 44 million rand, which is outstanding from last year. And basically, if that doesn't happen, you and I could see students going to finding themselves in the next coming weeks in a spot of bother. This is the latest. I mean, I think I told you about a week ago about the KwaZulu-Natal government basically writing an IOU to service providers to say, please deliver the stationery and books to schools. We will pay you. We are good for it. Last year, there was the Department of Public Works in the Eastern Cape that basically said, please understand, saying to landlords, please don't evict us. We are not able to pay. We will pay you. Next payment, I think they said, was going to be in April 2025. So that was last year, I think around October, thereabouts, or November. Next payment next year, this year, that is in April. So I don't know, how do we solve this issue once and for all of the non-payment of service providers on time? Maybe you might have some bright ideas. Do share them with me. So we will have a strong focus on higher education, including the issue of increased fees at universities. We also have all of your regulars locked and loaded, and Musa with your news updates every half hour, Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so, Zaikan is watching your sport throughout the morning, Ndauling Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered, Sipho Mantula with your Africa update just before 8 a.m. And as I said, your calls 086 000 2032, your WhatsApp voice notes to 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We're leading the conversations that move us. The first hour of the Wednesday edition of The Morning Brief starts now.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And good morning.
Good morning, Thulas.
Are your eyes on the WEF in Davos?
It definitely is. Yeah. We know that South Africa is this year hosting the G20 summit, right? And President Cyril Ramaphosa has outlined the country's priorities for this meeting, and this happened during a special address at the World Economic Forum, where the president called for collective efforts to rid the world of current conflict. So South Africa will be using its presidency of the G20 to tackle the challenges developing countries are facing, including rising debt and as well as looking at the effects of climate change. And in other stories, there's concerns about witness protection in the spotlight again in South Africa. And it comes after a brazen shooting at the Lenasia Magistrates Court in Johannesburg yesterday, where a witness that was scheduled to testify in a 2021 murder case was shot and killed. And this shooting incident, casting a dark shadow over courtroom safety, as well as looking at measures taken to protect witnesses. The EFF will today open a criminal case against the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Dean McPherson, and the party alleges that McPherson, in collusion with the Democratic Alliance, is abusing state institutions to serve the interests of white minority capital. In court, closing arguments in the case of Pastor Timothy Umutoso at the High Court in Gqeberha, the Eastern Cape, and the televangelist Umutoso and two co-accused, they are facing over 30 charges. That includes rape, human trafficking, and racketeering. This case started about 7 years ago. And the multiple murder accused Inakondo is also back in the High Court in Thohoyandou. He's accused of killing 7 family members during a family gathering on Christmas Day in 2021 at Jimmy Jones Village. And just lastly, cybercrime, we know, is growing at an alarming rate in the country, with more and more criminals exploiting the speed and convenience of the internet to commit a wide range of criminal activities. So today, the national head for the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, Lieutenant General Godfrey Libya, and his management, they will be hosting a high delegation of Interpol in support of South African law enforcement, this in strengthening the fight against crime, especially cybercrime, through partnership and collaboration. So some of the stories I'm focusing on this morning.
All right, thank you for that, Anne. That's Anne Musa there. You'll be hearing from Anne with updates every half hour here on the Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So let me take you through your weather. I do have some warnings. 3 impact-based warning. 1, yellow level 2 warning. Severe thunderstorms with heavy downpours, damaging winds and severe lightning expected over the western and southwestern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. The second one, yellow level 1 warning. Damaging winds and waves resulting in difficulty in navigation, small vessels taking on water and vessels dragging anchor are possible between Oyster Bay and Port Edward. And the last impact-based warning, it's a yellow level 2 warning, disruptive with heavy downpours leading to flooding and localized damage to infrastructure, and that is expected along the coast and adjacent interior of KwaZulu-Natal. The rest of your weather, Pretoria will be partly cloudy with isolated afternoon thunder showers, 17 to 31. Johannesburg, partly cloudy with isolated afternoon thunder showers, 15 to 27. Mbombela, partly cloudy with isolated afternoon thunder showers, 17 to 28. Polokwane, partly cloudy, 16 to 28. Mahikeng will be partly cloudy and windy with isolated thunder showers, 19 to 31. Bloemfontein will be partly cloudy and windy with scattered thunder showers, 18 to 33. Kimberley will be partly cloudy and windy with scattered thunder showers, 19 to 35. Cape Town will be partly cloudy, 23 to 30. George, partly cloudy, 16 to 29. Gqeberha, partly cloudy, 20 to 28. East London will be cloudy with isolated showers and rain, 20 to 26. Durban will be cloudy with isolated showers, 22 to 28. Richards Bay will be cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 23 to 30. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will see morning fog patches, otherwise cloudy with scattered showers and thunder showers, 18 to 29.
Get ready to make your life easier with Thulasizwe's new website features. We upgraded to the secure iVery 3D payment gateway and the ability to manage your account information, view, print, and download a detailed TV license statement. You can make website queries for an account and technical support, which has made things immensely easier. It is now a smooth, effortless process that can respond to all user inquiries quickly and efficiently. It is a great way to quickly get the help you need without worrying about a thing. Get started now and enjoy the convenience of Thulasizwe's new website features. Visit www.tvlic.co.za today. Thulasizwe, do it for the convenience that matter.
The Queens of South Africa's beautiful game are taking a break from their pitch duties to dress up and walk on the purple carpet. It's a special evening to celebrate players, coaches, administrators, and officials for their incredible devotion to the game. This is the Hollywoodbet Super League Awards 2024. From grassroots to glory. Witness the Hollywoodbet Super League Awards on Sunday, 26 January at 7:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
Yeah, just before I get into that, one of the other impacts, of course, of the election of Donald Trump that I failed to tabulate for you to consider is his whole talk around tariffs on U.S. imports from anywhere in the world, from many parts of the world. Who knows what kind of tariffs on products that come from the African continent, that come from South Africa, etc. What we are looking at as far as that is concerned. Speaking of Donald Trump, the U.S. President Donald Trump has been swift with his pen, signing a slew of executive orders on day one of his second presidential term. Among them, an instruction for the U.S. to withdraw from the World Health Organization. This is a move that public health experts say will undermine the nation's standing as a global health leader and make it harder to fight the next pandemic. Trump cited a string of reasons for the withdrawal, including what he says is the WHO's, quote, mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic, end quote, and what he says, quote unquote, failure to adopt urgently needed reforms. Let's speak to Elizabeth Sideropoulos, who is the Chief Executive of the South African Institute of International Affairs. Good morning, I've got to thank you for your time. So the WHO is part of the architecture of global governance that has its origins, I believe, in the post-World War II world. How significant is the withdrawal of the country that has been, until now, its biggest contributor financially?
Two reasons, one of which you've already sort of identified in your introduction, which is both about sort of what that means for health security, certainly in the U.S., and the U.S. as a really important health leader for many years. If we just think specifically, even in the South African context, of its contribution to the fight against HIV/AIDS. And so globally, in terms of international health security, I think this is going to be a problem. We know that when we talk about health, the weakest link is always the challenge here. If not everybody is within the system and able to fight the next pandemic, I think it's a problem not only for that country but also for the rest of us. But the second point, of course, also relates to the way in which the U.S. is going to be engaging with the global governance system, the world order, and its institutions, many of which hark back to the immediate post-World War era. The WHO was established, I think, in 48 or 47, and which, the U.S. has not always followed and complied with these global governance institutions, as we know, but it certainly has been very much part of the system and a supporter of the system. And I think we're entering a period now when all of those precepts that we sort of learnt about and thought would form a really essential pillar of the way in which we conduct international relations are being eroded by the very country that actually helped to set them up.
Yeah, and in fact, I was reading somewhere that the only other bloc of nations to ever withdraw was the Soviet Union, but they later rejoined the WHO. In a context where funding is a key issue for the WHO, and already Donald Trump has been complaining about an undue influence, according to him, from China. What happens in the vacuum that's left by the departure of the United States, the leadership vacuum, the funding vacuum, the ability to influence, the direction of the WHO?
Well, it will, as you said, it will create a vacuum. The question is, and I mean, it's a significant contributor. I think it contributes at least 50 billion or 60 billion more than China, which is, I think, the second largest contributor. So I think it's going to be a significant, going to have an immediately significant impact on the finances of the WHO in the first instance, and those are always a challenge. It never has enough to be able to carry out a much broader mandate. I'm sure that over the course of in the medium term, others will probably move in to make up or at least to contribute more to the WHO. It will mean that from a geopolitical perspective, we'll see a growing influence, say, for a country like China, who has, I think, particularly over the last couple of decades, really been very keen to increase the role that it plays in most of the global governance institutions, and certainly the UN agencies and bodies. And it may also, I think, interesting to see what the various philanthropies do, because they're also very big supporters of the contributors to the WHO, and so that's a good thing in one way. But it's important for member states of these institutions to be the ones that are shaping the agenda and the focus, rather than obviously a predominance of philanthropic private institutions.
Yeah. Ironically, the WHO's constitution was drafted in New York. and my understanding is that it doesn't have a clear exit method for member states. And I guess that talks to, they never conceived that it would be possible for any country to want to pull out of the situation. Of course, the U.S. does have a process that it will follow in terms of its own laws in the United States. The other one that I wanted to talk to, Elizabeth, is the decision around withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. This is something he did before, and Biden took the U.S. back into the Paris Climate Agreement. What's the impact now? Because he's starting it quite early, on day one, in fact, part of the executive orders. So quite early, there'll be enough time lag to allow for whatever notice period needs to be served, and eventually the U.S. will be out of the climate agreement again.
Yeah. So I think absolutely. The timing is the issue here. I think it will leave during the Trump presidency. Clearly, this was not unexpected. It is always puzzling for me, given that we've just experienced one of the hottest year in history, and given some of the natural disasters that the U.S. has faced, which are the result of climate change. I think what is important to bear in mind, there are two dimensions. There is what the U.S., of course, does at the federal level, but it's also the fact that it is a federal state, and that we've seen even in the first Trump administration a significant amount of initiatives that were undertaken by cities and states to mitigate climate change. We know that even in the context of the Paris Treaty and the negotiations and the UNFCCC processes, that cities globally actually are important actors and play an important role. So we may see the locus shift to sort of what local governments and states do in support of the Paris Agreement, but certainly there will be an impact on the way in which the U.S. supports at the federal level many of the processes that it has contributed to in the past. Certainly, if we think about the contributions to South Africa's Just Energy Transition Partnership. And one last One last point, of course, is that even within the administration, I think what is interesting is that, you have somebody like Elon Musk, who has Tesla and electric vehicles. Now, Donald Trump has said that he's going to end the electric vehicle mandate. But I think there are interesting dynamics and competing interests within the administration that we will see how they will play out over the course of the next few months.
Thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Elizabeth Sideropoulos, who is the Chief Executive of the South African Institute of International Affairs. Let's check in now with Ann Musa with the latest news headlines.
Thanks, Tulas. Good morning. In the headlines, independent economist Elise Kruger says inflation is expected to tick up slightly following a fuel price hike and an increase in other household expenses recorded in December 2024. Her comments come as Stats SA prepares to release the December inflation numbers this morning. Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police says it's concerned about consequence management delays at the South African Police Service. It says this includes dealing with Deputy President Paul Mashatile's VIP protection unit. And President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will use its G20 presidency as a platform for cooperation and collaboration among leading economies to a new level. He says through its presidency, South Africa also aims to consolidate all G20 initiatives to support African countries. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Focus on Durban this morning because of the wet weather conditions. Over 30 mils of rain in the last 24 hours, most of that coming after 6 p.m. last night. Roads are wet, they are slippery, there's surface water, there are pockets of flooding, and the rain continues, and it's likely to be with us most of today. First casualty there, a truck that is jackknifed on the slippery M19 between Dunkeld Road and Reservoir Hills. You've come from Claremont, New Germany side, out of Pint and use the M19 every morning. Probably a good idea to avoid that. The queue is quite heavy. In fact, we've got reports of 2 truck crashes on that particular M19, but it's that jackknife truck going into Reservoir Hills that's causing the big delay. Only a crash on the M2 north before the M7's just being cleared, so that backlog should be make its way through. Big truck crashes north of Warden to watch for. Recovery underway. All traffic being shipped into contraflow on the southbound side. Joburg N12 coming inbound is pretty heavily backed already into Galuli's queues back through the Edenvale exit. And if you're driving into Cape Town, a crash on the N2 inbound just by Bunga Avenue in front of Langa. That's why the queue is back to the airport. And the M7's very heavy this morning, even by its own standards, leaving Mitchell's Bay. Big backlogs from sort of Westport Drive all the way out through Morganstead, through Highlands, all the way up to that R300 junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
So all our teams have these nice nicknames: Bafana, Amajita, Banyana. Now we're talking about Bantwana. Yeah?
Yeah.
Bantwana have, they're trying to get to the World Cup, but they have Nigeria standing in the way.
Also known as the Flamingos. So I think, you know what? Africa's football talent, this is a showdown of showdowns, and it's heating up with their coach from Nigeria, the under-17 women's national team coach, Bankole Olowokere, expressed confidence in securing a victory against Botswana in the upcoming FIFA Women's Under-17 World Cup qualifier. Now, while Nigeria received a bye in the first round of qualifiers, South Africa's Botswana defeated Gabon a staggering 21-2 goals scored. And I mean, it's unbelievable. But nevertheless, Nigeria are set to introduce new faces to their squad for the two-legged affair. And they're emphasizing that development as well as international exposure has helped their team become the 5-time African champions. Now, having secured a bronze medal in the 2022 Under-17 World Cup, Olowokere says they will continue working hard ahead of the two-legged qualifier in a few weeks' time.
We prepared adequately well, hoping to have a good outing against South Africa. I mean, we'll win the match because that's all about the purpose of the party. So we are training to make sure that we get the winning strategy against South Africa. All right.
More soccer. Aston Villa missed the chance to all but secure their place in the Champions League knockouts. They were beaten 1-0 by Monaco at start Louis II. The defeat means Unai Emery's side will likely need to beat Celtic at Villa Park to seal a top 8 place in the league phase of the competition. Meanwhile, the win boosted Monaco's own automatic qualification hopes as they moved alongside Villa on 13 points. Raphinha scored in stoppage time to complete a comeback as Barcelona beat Benfica 5-4 in Lisbon, despite having been 4-2 down with less than a quarter of an hour remaining. Liverpool had a 2-1 win over Lille in their UEFA Champions League phase. The result means Liverpool advanced from the league phase with one game to spare, while Lille dropped to 11th place in the standings. Julian Alvarez scored a 90th minute winner to lift Atletico Madrid to a 2-1 win over Bayer Leverkusen. Tennis action. Aryna Sabalenka says she was all over the place as she survived a scare against Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova to reach the Australian Open semi-finals and continue her bid for a third straight Melbourne title. The Belarusian Sabalenka kept her cool to fight and wrap up a 6-2, 2-6, 6-3 win. Madison Keys came from a set down to reach the semi-finals of the Australian Open, beating Ukraine's Elina Svitolina 3-6, 6-3, 6-4. The American 19-seed Keys is into the last four at Melbourne Park, where she will meet Iga Swiatek, who beat Emma Navarro this morning 6-1, 6-2. And Novak Djokovic producing yet another comeback, stunning Carlos Alcaraz in a thriller and reaching the Australian Open semi-finals 4-6, 6-4, 6-3, 6-4. That's a wrap of your sport on the Morning Brief. More top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Hey, Ndauling, good morning to you. So let's start with news out of the United States. Donald Trump has been busy in the first few days of his presidency, and he's talking tariffs once again, and it's directed at China.
That's right, Celeste, and morning. Now, President Donald Trump considering imposing a 10% tariff on China, citing the country's role in sending fentanyl to Mexico and Canada. According to the president, the proposed tariff, which could take effect as early as the 1st of February, aims to address the growing issue of fentanyl overdose deaths in the U.S. Trump has been vocal about China's alleged unfair trade practices and has previously threatened to impose tariffs upwards of 60% on Chinese goods. Now, the potential tariff has sparked concerns about the impact on the global economy. According to CNBC, China's Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping emphasized that there are no winners in a trade war and called for international cooperation to support economic globalization at the World Economic Forum. Meanwhile, the U.S.-based Peterson Institute for International Economics estimated that if the U.S. imposes an additional 10% tariff on China and China retaliates, the U.S. GDP could be $55 billion less over 4 years, while China's GDP could be $128 billion less. Additionally, Trump's team is discussing imposing a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada, citing concerns over border security and immigration. The proposed tariffs have been met with some skepticism, with many experts warning of the potential consequences for the global economy.
So what have you been streaming on Netflix, Dowling?
I've been part of everyone that's been streaming Squid Game.
Oh, I see. I've been watching a bit of Konk on Life, Philomena Konk. I'm such a huge fan. So the reason I ask is that we are looking forward to the Netflix Q4 numbers. So what are the expectations there?
So actually they're out on Squid Game, right? Squid Game, the live stream of the Mike Tyson and Jack Paul fight, even though it had a lot of glitches, and the National Football League games on Christmas Day have given Netflix a boost. During the fourth quarter, the firm added a record 19 million subscribers, which pushed total subscribers to 300 million subscribers. You and I are both part of that 3 million. Now, Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos says a number of subscribers during the period came for the sport events and ended up keeping their subscriptions. Now, Netflix says the fourth quarter is the last quarter where it will be reporting quarterly paid subscriber counts. Instead, it will start reporting a biannual engagement report alongside its second and fourth quarter releases. Zooming in on those numbers, revenue increased by 16%, jumping to $10.2 billion, and net income rose to $1.87 billion from $938 million in the previous quarter. The market-beating numbers allowed Netflix to raise its 2025 forecast. Its revenue expectations now range between $43.5 billion to $44.5 billion, around $500 million higher than its previous forecast, which reflects improved business fundamentals and the expected carryover benefit of a stronger than expected Q4 performance.
All right, please give us our first roundup of market activity for the morning.
The U.S. markets back online yesterday, kicking off the week on a high as traders sifted through some of Trump's executive orders. With that, stocks closed in positive territory in yesterday's session. Dow Jones, the biggest gainer on that front, up 1.24%. Here at home, markets are mixed, but closed mostly in the green. The all share rising 0.13%, fueled by a 0.78% increase in the Resources 10 complex. On the currency front, the rand quite steady, trading at levels we saw yesterday, sitting at 18.51 to the dollar. Then over in Asia, markets mixed this morning with traders reacting to President Trump's recent commentary, specifically his threat of imposing another round of tariffs on China as soon as the 1st of February. So that's fueling sentiment in that region.
All right, Ndauleng, we'll catch up with you a bit later on. Ndauleng Lechela there, watching business, economics and the markets for you throughout the morning here on The Morning Brief.
Your best year starts at Dis-Chem with unbeatable deals on health foods for the whole family. Get 2+1 cheapest free on any Nature's Choice health products and get 20% instant discount on all health teas, hot drinks, honeys and spreads from brands such as Jacobs, Little B and more. Just swipe your benefit card at the till. Shop in-store and online for the lowest prices on the widest range of health foods. Now on until 16 February. Dis-Chem Pharmacies. Better health starts here.
Compliments for 2025, Mangani. Call me Mabel Goals because I'm coming for it all this year. Body, relationship, and financial goals. With my Just Invest account, financially I'm cruising. 2 more to go. You know any available Prince Charming voice, man?
I've got you, Mabel. Sorry. Mara, you can also be like Mabel and earn up to 8.25% in interest to start the year right. Open yours via the Money app today. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. Promo rates apply. Go to nedbank.co.za for more information.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll get a fantastic price for your car. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
Right, we're preparing for the 2025 academic year in as far as higher education is concerned. So let's start with our focus this morning. The Private Student Housing Association, PSHA, has requested the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, to immediately make payments for past rental bills to accommodation providers to avoid disruptions in the 2025 academic year. The PSHA's members provide affordable accommodation to more than 80,000 students each year. The association says NSFAS owes it a sum of 44 million rand in unpaid bills for 2024. Let's bring into the conversation Craig McMurray, who is the CEO and founder of Republica Student Living and director of the Private Student Housing Association. Good morning to you, Craig, and thank you for your time. So just take me to the background. The figure that is cited is 44 million rand. Is that accumulate? Over what period did that accumulate, and what is the reason that has not been paid to date?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. So the 44 million, let's just emphasize, only represents the arrears rentals for 2024 that relate to the PSHA members. So we've got no doubt that there's a lot of other outstanding arrears to other landlords which may not be members of PSHA. So these rentals are for the period from February to November of 2024, and they on a national basis owed by NSFAS across all the campuses.
But hang on, Craig, wasn't there a bulk payment around May or so? I remember that being announced that, following some delays, Freeman Nomvalo, the administrator at NSFAS, and others had managed to ensure that there was a bulk payment that was made.
No, that's not correct. So there were arrears at the beginning of the year. This is a perpetual problem that we have year on year. But at the same time, NSFAS has been in the process of attempting to implement many changes. And those changes involve centralising a lot of the accreditation and direct payment to landlords. So we had a lot of private pilot projects going on around the country. So there isn't any one process that ran last year. There were different processes run at different campuses and universities. So the bulk payments that they refer to may have been a catch-up, but the reality is that when we talk about direct payments from NSFAS, there are many landlords who were supposed to be paid directly. They received some payment, and in certain cases, no payment for students who were approved. So we're not talking about disputed amounts. We're talking about students with approved funding where NSFAS failed to make some or all of the payments for the year that the students rented accommodation.
What is the impact on your members and, importantly, on the 80,000 students that you accommodate?
It's a massive impact, and I'm sure as anyone can understand that all these businesses have ongoing costs and liabilities that they need to meet month on month. Bear in mind as well that accommodation landlords don't get any revenue over December and January. They've got to wait until February at best, and typically NSFAS then has delays, both NSFAS and university administration, in paying rental allowances. So you find that a lot of landlords are only getting their first cash flow as late as May or June in a year. So this puts tremendous strain on the industry, where there's a lot of outgoing costs that need to be met for municipalities, for rates, taxes, lights, water, paying staff, and very importantly, meeting the debt obligation to banks. So without any payment, it's detrimental, and it risks the doors being closed and landlords not being able to operate. But in addition, one mustn't forget that at the end of the day, it's the price of the students we're talking about. And there are thousands of students, just on the 44 million. It relates to thousands of students who will not be able to return back to their residences because the landlords can't be expected to take in students who want to return if they still have outstanding payments for 2024, because there's no guarantee they're going to get any payments for 2025. So this is going to put huge pressure and unnecessary burden on students when they arrive at university expecting to take up a room and their bed, and they denied access. It really has got the potential makings of a chaotic situation.
In fact, Craig, say a bit more about that. Have you as an association reached a point where you cannot take it anymore and are going to have to take that hard stance that says until these areas are cleared, the students that are returning for 2025 will not be able to access their accommodation?
I don't think it's the association, really, it's the members. Every member has its own standard and its own operating procedures and position on this. But the reality is that we know that our members are under extreme financial pressure, so we can't blame them for taking it. It really is a last resort, and they are, I know, working with students across the board to try and find solutions, but it is highly likely that students with unpaid fees at most of these residences will not be able to return until NSFAS has sorted out the problem.
And just beyond the issue of the outstanding rentals, there's quite a number of other systemic issues that you've been raising as an association. I know that you are not happy with the cap that has been placed at 50,000 rand per student, but also the administrative fees that NSFAS charges. Just talk to me about those other systemic overhauls that you would like to see.
Sure. I think the first thing before we get into the actual cap and fees, they are related, but is the lack of preparedness from NSFAS for the start of this academic year. So we don't even know what our rental rate for 2025 is going to be yet, and NSFAS hasn't proclaimed that. So we don't know if it is going to be market-related or if it's going to be uneconomical. That's on the landlord side. On the student side, without knowing the rate, they don't actually know what they're going to be liable for either. So that in itself is a problem. The rate should have been announced last year at the end of the third quarter, and still nothing has happened. And then the other important issue is the accreditation of rentals. And NSFAS has taken on the centralisation of this. They've created portals with service providers. And there's a lot of confusion around, at this late stage in late January, as to who's actually going to be accrediting residences. And without residences being accredited, Mr. students can't stay there. We've even had communications during the course of this week, yesterday and on Monday, about a change in the accreditation portal providers. Now, how they're going to change when a lot of those thousands of beds which should be registered and accredited on these portals have not been accredited yet. This process takes months. Yet we're sitting in January, the end of January, with varsity about to open in 2 weeks' time. And residence has not been accredited for students to reside in.
Yeah.
So it all has the makings really for a chaotic and shambolic start to the beginning of the academic year.
All right, let's see how it unfolds. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's Craig McMurray, who is the CEO and founder of Republica Student Living and also the director of the Private Student Housing Association.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Joburg N3 is heavy this morning, a breakdown before Marlborough Drive, and that's pushing traffic deep back into sort of Edenvale and Galuli's interchange territory. A lot of traffic running up that N3, very slow up towards, passing Alex and up towards the Lindbro Park off-ramp. N1 South, a busy start as well for traffic out of Midrand, slow from John Foster down to about Olifantsfontein Road. And the R21 leaving the airport on way to Pretoria, roadwork still there opposite Tembisa. Before you get to Olifantsfontein Road, so factor in some queue time there. It's going to be a bit of a mission to get around Durban this morning. Wet weather conditions, plenty of rain overnight, more today. Roads are wet and slippery. We are looking at a lot of crash scenes. Pretty heavy traffic through the rain as well. Toti through Prospected. M19 should be avoided. There are truck crashes on both the Durban bound side and the Pinetown bound side. All of that unfolding between Dunkeld Road and Reservoir Hills Mountbatten Drive. So very heavy standstill traffic both ways along the M19 this morning. Also stationary truck to watch out for on your way through to Pietermaritzburg just before Market Road. Left lane is blocked there. Cape Town still dealing with a crash into inbound in front of Langa, so a queue coming through from the airport. Once you get past that, you stay in traffic all the way through to Mowbray Main Road. N1 looks like a busy midweek Wednesday flow as well, with traffic from Brackenfell all the way down to the Kuburg interchange. And again, pretty sandy at Monwa BC, Baden-Powell Drive, bottom of Khayelitsha. Go carefully through there. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
7 minutes to 7 here on SAFM. So we wanted to take forward a conversation that we started yesterday about the importance of court interpretation services in guaranteeing a fair trial. The quality of court translations is currently under the spotlight due to several matters currently before the courts and playing themselves out in the public domain. The Department of Justice commissions interpreters for court proceedings and relies on them for factual witness statements. So let's take that conversation up with the department. I'm joined by Paul Mogobotlwana, who is the Provincial Manager for Language Services at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. So just tell me, to what extent do the ongoing processes, the Selbin Benenge, Judge Selbin Benenge process, as well as the Senzo Meyiwa trial, a few months ago there was a trial involving Gizwe Mchunu and quite an animated interpreter in that matter. To what extent do what we see on TV in court situations mirror and reflect the situation around interpretation services, their availability and the likes across the country on a daily basis?
Thank you very much. Morning, listeners. Mrs. Simelane, provision of language service has always been a constitutional imperative for the Department of Justice. We are obliged by law to provide that service in terms of Section 35(3)(k) of the Constitution, which entitles everyone who appears in our courts to be served in the language that they understand. So we do not have a challenge of unavailability of court interpreters, because if that was the case, there will be instances where certain courts cannot run because there are no interpreters at all. There could be minor glitches, perhaps, surrounding the issue of languages where courts have to interchange interpreters because of specific languages. But we have interpreters in our permanent employ, and we have capacity, even though it's limited on foreign language interpreters within our pool. But we augment it with foreign language interpreting service that we source from outside. But our duty is to make sure that all courts in the country start at 9 and are provided with language service adequately.
So, but what measures do you then take to ensure that the court interpreters perform at the highest level, given the importance of the task at hand? I mean, it's I would say a no-fail mission, in the sense that it's sometimes a person's liberty that is at stake, or substantial rights that they have that are usually at stake.
As a department, we are very much alive to the fact that we are dealing with people's freedom, which is not a matter of joke. We're taking it very serious, in that we have invested in training interpreters, in professionalizing the whole environment. During the last 2 years, we were in consultations with universities to influence the design of curriculum in training court interpreters, so that the kind of training that is offered by institutions of higher learning is related to day-to-day frustrations of interpreters in our courts. And we are at the stage where we are finalizing the new curriculum. But at the moment, we also have a group of interpreters who are on a learnership of legal interpreting. We have Bridget Mavandla Justice College in Pretoria, where we are doing our in-service training of interpreters, aligning the training curriculum to day-to-day frustrations of interpreters. So this comes as a coincidence, because we are at a stage where now we are about to finalize the professionalization of court interpreting to optimize the quality, accuracy, and relevance.
That's important, is it not, the professionalization? Because there have been instances where some of that has been questionable, where you get a sense that this person, I don't know, they're being animated unnecessarily, in a way detracting from the seriousness of the matter. In fact, I wanted to take a call, but it's fine, just respond to that. The quality monitoring, do you monitor, especially when you are afforded the opportunity to do so, by these court processes playing out in public, such that people are not being animated and being dramatic unnecessarily, detracting from actually what is the core task at hand?
On an annual basis, all court interpreters enter into performance agreement. It is in this agreement that you find key result areas on which you need to evaluate interpreters. And the only time you can evaluate an interpreter is live in court. So we have supervisors who make spot visitation in court unannounced to evaluate the interpreters as they interpret. And that informs the performance and development plan of individual interpreter. Once you get into court and see certain challenges, then you are able to map the development for that particular interpreter. This person has a problem of non-equivalence. This person has a problem of cross-cultural knowledge, and so forth. So the continuous quality assurance evaluation that is in place assists us in improving the quality of court interpreting from day to day.
But objectively, and very quickly, Mr. Makgobotlwane, do you believe that some of the concerns that have been raised by some sectors of society, not everyone, obviously, about what we've seen of this service playing out in the public domain are valid?
Well, not all could be valid, because we are different users of the language. And another thing is that language in court proceedings is used contextually. Somebody who comes into proceedings in the middle of it may find very odd for a certain word to be used, but those who have been following proceedings would understand the meaning has changed in terms of context. So sometimes criticism comes from an uninformed position. I'm not saying interpreters are angels and are not subject to errors, But there are good interpreters out there that I've never had being praised for the good job they do.
Sure. Gotcha. All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Paul Mahobotlwane, who is the Provincial Manager for Language Services at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Bringing us to 7 a.m., let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, Stats SA to release December CPI figures and South Africa's focus on flagship agreements for investment. Good morning. Independent economist Elise Kruger says inflation is expected to tick up slightly following a fuel price hike and an increase in other household expenses recorded in December 2024. Her comments come as Stats SA prepares to release the December inflation numbers this morning. Kruger explains what to expect.
Overall, it's a moderate increase in fuel prices, but also a high survey month. Thus, quarterly surveys for actual rentals, owner's equivalent rent, domestic worker wages, motor vehicle insurance, all of those will also impact on the number. Core inflation is forecast to tick up to 3.8% on an annual basis compared to 3.7% in November. December's numbers are likely to confirm that inflation remains well under control in South Africa. However, factors such as the recent depreciation of the rand exchange rate and upward pressure on the international oil price are factors that are likely to impact the outlook into 2025.
Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police says it's concerned about consequence management delays at the South African Police Service. It says this includes dealing with Deputy President Paul Mashatile's VIP Protection Unit. This follows allegations that officers in the unit assaulted a motorist and 2 passengers on the N1 in Gauteng in 2023. Recently, the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, said that at least 40 police officers were on suspension with full pay. The action against the officers follows their alleged involvement in crimes including murder and sexual assault. Committee Chairperson Ian Cameron is adamant that rogue police officers must be removed.
The continued delay, and this is just a simple example of consequence management against the 8 VIP officers that belong to the protection detail of the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, on the N1 over a year ago, is a huge concern for the committee because they are still in service of the South African Police Service, and the solution thereof remains to be seen.
The National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, says it's working to address accommodation issues students are facing, including not paying landlords. Registration has been disrupted at the Mbumbulu TVET College in the south of Durban. Some landlords closed the gates to their properties following alleged payment disputes with NSFAS. NSFAS Administrator Freeman Nomvalo says they've started to process outstanding claims.
For a number of students, the payment is made to the students because the issues of the pilot had not been rolled out to everybody. So not all the landlords were on the NSFAS system to be paid directly by NSFAS. And in some instances, we have identified that students have not paid over that money to the landlords. And then there are some cases that Bongile was referring to, where the data that is available does not enable immediate payment. It needs to be verified, cross-checked, so that the payments are made to valid.
A man has started to serve his 18-year jail term following his sentence in the Burgersfort Magistrates Court in Limpopo yesterday. The court had found the man guilty of raping a minor at her residence in July 2022. The man had gone to the minor's home under the pretext of buying cigarettes. Police have welcomed the sentence. President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will use its G20 presidency as a platform for taking cooperation and collaboration among leading economies to a new level. He says through its presidency, South Africa also aims to consolidate all G20 initiatives to support African countries. Ramaphosa says this will result in a flagship agreement for investment in productive sectors on the continent, particularly infrastructure. He addressed the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
We seek investments in development of skills that will also fuel this infrastructure revolution, particularly for Africa's youth and the economic empowerment of the women of our continent. In the health sector, we would want the G20 to support the production of pharmaceutical products such as therapeutics as well as vaccines to deal with pandemics. The digitization of the continent, particularly when it comes to artificial intelligence, will enhance trade and development.
Recapping the top story, independent economist Elise Kruger says inflation is expected to tick up slightly following a fuel price hike and an increase in other household expenses recorded in December last year. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
This January, to save money, you could cut back on the family price, or you could switch to Outsurance and save on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash, and make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, Joburg's N3 under pressure from as far back as sort of Voortrekker Road, N12, Alberton territory, all the way through to Marlborough Drive. There's a crash now between London Road and Marlborough Drive. That N3 basically all the way through, absolutely tight. The roadworks on the R21 at Olifantsfontein Road is still there if you're leaving the airport on your way to Pretoria. Factor in some queue times. And the Mopani Highway is heavy backlog this morning. The Pretoria queues from Brits Road, Theo Martins around the bend, and all the way down to Eskia. Durban, very slow all over on account of the weather conditions. The one to avoid would be the M19. There's a truck that's jackknifed on your way to Durban before Reservoir Hills. There's a truck that's overturned on your way to Pinetown around Dunkeld Road, and it's absolutely jam-packed. In fact, that M19 may well be closed, so just avoid that by going further south, the other side of Westville, and taking the M13 as your alternative. Cape Town, just generally a lot of traffic on this Wednesday, including a crash on the R300 north before Van Riebeeck Road. Delays coming up from the Delft area. N1 from Plattekloof Hill, solid all the way through to Kuiberg. Interchange. M5, give you an idea of how busy it is. M5's queuing back towards the Ottery area with a pushback all the way through towards the busy N2 exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headline, it's cricket action. It's rain halting play at Kingsmead last night, but MI Cape Town still top the log. And in soccer, Nigeria are looking at grounding Botswana in the Under-17 Women's World Cup qualifiers. Details around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 7 on this Wednesday. Hey, good morning, folks. We are into the second hour of the morning brief here on SAFM. Let me just tell you what's coming up on the show. In this hour, we'll focus a bit, we'll continue actually, the focus on higher education that we started with that conversation in the last hour around the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. This time around, we want to talk about the imminent tuition and residence fee increases that are going to be implemented, that are set to be implemented by institutions of higher learning, universities and the like. And we're talking here, the estimation being something between 4.5% to 8%. This juxtaposed against a decline in the funding from the state and support, financial support of institutions of higher education. And so we'll have that conversation in a moment with a representative from the student movement as well as Universities South Africa, just to get their perspectives. Then we'll take forward a conversation that we started somehow yesterday. The ANC announcing that it will be slow down, Thulasizwe. It will be reconfiguration of its Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal provincial executive committees, and we'll be reflecting on that and giving you some analysis on that. And of course, you can be part of these conversations. The number to dial is 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes. I'll take those on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Whether you're having a early, snoozy, tantrumy, chill, frustrating, or jokey morning, mornings love McDonald's, so choose happy and enjoy a Burry Burger Double and a short filter coffee for only R39.90 from 6 to 10:30 a.m. at McDonald's.
This January, to save money, you could cut back on the family price, or you could switch to Outsurance and save on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash, and make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS OUT to 30754. That's OUT to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
So let's start this hour with this story then. The higher education institutions in this country are raising their tuition and residence fees for 2025, with increases ranging between 4.5% and 8%. This comes after the reversal of a proposed zero-fee increase by the Minister of Higher Education, Nobuhle Nkabane. The hikes have largely been attributed to inflation, rising operational costs, and the need to ensure the financial sustainability of universities. Let's get the take first of the South African Union of Students, and I'm joined now by Asi Vedlanjwa, who is the spokesperson of SAWUS. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So just your reaction to the planned increases between 4.5% and 8%. What does this mean for your constituency?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and also to your listeners. Look, it is any rise in cost of study as it pertains, in fact, in the sector, will always and has always proven to be devastating, particularly for students of the working class. Now, notwithstanding the reality that obviously there's been a rise in the cost of everything with inflation, etc. But the reality is that when it pertains to higher education in South Africa, we have not been able to justify the exclusive and the exorbitant cost of higher education. It's just you can't justify it. You can't justify how one degree, one product, the same product with the same specifications can be at 30,000 Rand in one institution and in another institution 80,000 Rand. So we have not been able to justify that cost. So that's the first thing, is that notwithstanding that obviously there's been a rise in cost of purchase, but the reality is that those fees are exorbitant and they will prove to be difficult and in fact further impede access. Now, one would argue that no, but 90% of students are already paid for by the state, and that's precisely we think is the problem, is that because there's a heavy reliance on the state to pay, universities have willy-nilly been increasing these fees, and ultimately what happens is that we will never get to a point where we can have fully free education in the country because we are chasing a moving target. So that's partly some of the problems that we are facing, is that the sum and total impact of what is happening is that it's going to impede access into institutions of higher learning.
On which side should the blame lie more than, if you do comparisons? Should it be more on the universities and councils that are approving these budgets that factor in these increases, citing the increased costs, inflation and the like? Or should it be on the government whose decisions to reduce funding, we are told at least by the universities that that's part of the factors that are leading to these increases?
Culpability runs across the spectrum. They all probably should be blamed. Government should be blamed in the sense that for many years now, the conversation has been about how do we standardize and how do we justify the cost of higher education in South Africa. We need and have been speaking about a fees framework that informs what is the cost of education, and that has not been done. Hence, I tell you of the variance that you will find of one particular degree with the same specs being 3 times more in another institution. And these are all public institutions, by the way, because one would argue that, no, these are private institutions driven by profit. I said, no, these are public institutions that are largely funded by the state. So that's the first. That's the responsibility of government that government needs to take, and that we need to deal with. The second one is obviously, generally the incontinently parasitic nature of universities, to the extent that you have vice chancellors that are getting paid 2 times what the president of the country gets paid in South Africa, and someone is presiding over 20,000 students, and and you can't even, by the way, see the relations between the contribution of that particular institution to the broader socio-economic development of that particular region of the country, for that matter. So the point here is that you've got costs within the sector, within universities themselves, where councils and university leadership are responsible for the high cost and in those particular institutions. So both of them, there's capability on both ends.
Asive, don't go anywhere. I will before we part ways, ask you about the proposed zero-fee increase that has since been deferred by the minister. But let me bring in Dr. Petiwe Matutu, who is the CEO of Universities South Africa, into this conversation. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. Let me just start with you confirming, what is the overall picture in terms of the increases that have been approved by various councils? What's the average? What are we looking at?
We have not looked at that data yet. Mm-hmm. What we have agreed on is that there needs to be a minimum of at least CPI increases among universities, so that at least they can take care of the inflation-related costs. More than 60% of their budgets are usually on permanent staff costs. Mm-hmm. And in the negotiations, these amounts of CPI or thereabouts would have been approved already. So the idea of not being able to increase fees in 2025 would not be workable for universities.
So, let me just ask you then about that zero-fee increase that had been mooted by the minister. And it has since been, deferred with the minister saying, while the proposal underscores government's commitment to ensuring access and affordability, she recognizes that the current time limitations and the prerogative to determine tuition fees lies with university councils. You welcome, I imagine, that deferment of that zero increase that the minister had mooted.
I think the minister had something in mind, looking at the possibility of funding this difference in another way. The problem was that the timing did not allow that to happen. So the assumption is that it's not talking about being deferred. It's about looking at alternative sources of funding so that that can be closed, because it is understood that all these costs do increase your subscriptions to IT services, to publications, access to publications, and so on. Operations of the university, ensuring that the buildings are well taken care of. All these costs have something to do with the inflation.
But there's this criticism, and I think if you were listening to the conversation that I started with Asive Dlanjwa, he used the words universities are parasitic in nature, and talking about the standardization, not understanding why the same degree with the same specs will cost one amount at one university but cost significantly higher amount at the next university. And also touching on issues of executive pay, vice chancellors and the like. To what extent do you, as Universities South Africa and your constituency, take responsibility for those aspects of the increases?
Universities differ in nature. We've got a differentiated system of universities in our country. So you'll find out that those which focus more on research intensive in terms of the number of postgraduate students, in terms of the publications, innovations, and so on, that is quite an expensive endeavor. And for them to compete at a global level as we have in our country, they need to have world-class researchers, and they need to have very much qualified staff. So there is a major difference between such institutions and those which are not necessarily research-intensive in terms of staffing, because you'll find out that more than 80% of those staff members have PhDs. More than a particular percentage, they are full professors, world-class, can teach anywhere in the world. So the comparison in terms of the salaries then will vary, and then the cost of the university. Similarly with facilities, we will see rugby clubs, rugby fields, which are all over the place, and those cost money need money to maintain. So what councils do is to look at their budgets on the basis of all these things taken together. And there are two sources of funding only which are reliable within universities. The first one being subsidies from government, which is based on the number of students which are in the system and which are graduating. And the second one being student fees. So in order to pay the staff members that we have spoken about, you have to rely on these two sources of funding. So the third source of funding, which is the third stream funding, normally is earmarked and also is reliant on the other two in order to maintain. So on the basis of that, the councils of universities decide on the increases which are necessary for them to maintain the operations of the university.
Dr. Matutu, just lastly to you, is there urgency to this moment for us to finally and decisively find a solution to this funding crisis? I mean, I asked this question of the backdrop of figures from the medium-term expenditure framework signaling some reduction in as far as NSFAS allocations are concerned, but also we are told that the higher education as a spending item has dropped as a percentage of GDP from 2% to 1.78%. How do we then find a lasting solution to these issues so that we don't keep having this conversation every year?
The lasting solution is to look at, firstly, the NSFAS and the sustainability, to find various sources of funding for it, and to increase the government subsidies so that universities can be much more sustainable.
All right, thank you for that. Let me bring back Asive. All right, I see that I've lost Asive Dlanjwa there. Those were my two guests, Asive Dlanjwa, who is the spokesperson of the South African Union of Students, as well as Dr. Petiwe Matutu, who is the CEO of Universities South Africa.
Ethical is what defines our business. I think OUTsurance does have integrity. They are not just there for the money, they're there to create a relationship. It's like a partner in business. It's the best thing we've ever done to switch over to OUTsurance. It's a no-brainer.
Switch to Business OUTsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
This is Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
So let's continue this conversation. We touched on it yesterday, and in fact, many of you were quite keen to have the conversation. So we thought we'd bring in someone to take that forward. The ANC, the African National Congress, has announced a leadership reconfiguration in its Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal provincial executive committees. And this follows the disappointing election results in both provinces in the elections last year. The decision was announced on Monday. The reconfiguration of PSCs means that new people could be appointed to the top 5 leadership positions, as well as the rest of the PSC, including the provincial chairperson and provincial secretary roles. Let's see how that might work, because it's still being worked out. Mbazi Mashilowa, who is the former Premier of Gauteng and the former General Secretary of COSATU, joins me now to take that conversation forward. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. There's been a bit of analysis even before the national officials have given their proposals to the National Working Committee of the ANC on what reconfiguration means. South Africans have been debating it at length. What's your understanding this morning, Mbazi Mashilowa, of what it means?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and good morning to your listeners. I wrote an article for News 24 yesterday in which I'm saying that obviously reconfiguration starts after dissolution, disbandment, whatever you want to call it, because if you were just going to augment the structure, you don't need to reconfigure its leadership. But if you're going to reconfigure, it means that you're going to tamper first with what the conference of Gauteng or KwaZulu-Natal have decided in terms of leadership. You then say, in terms of this or that clause of the Constitution, we now dissolve. We're going to put together a temporary structure, whether it's 3, 9 months, or a year, and then bring in other people. So we're talking dissolution and starting from scratch. That's the first thing. Secondly, there's nothing wrong with acting and disbanding. It just depends on what you put in place to replace it. I used as an example disbandment that have really not yielded good results in the Free State from the beginning and later in Northwest, but also where results were yielded in Gauteng in 2000 and also in Limpopo in 2013. And finally, I think for that reconfiguration to succeed, the people that are brought in as part of this new leadership, even if it includes the previous ones, must be people who have got no interest in going into government in the province and or permanently being in leadership in the province. Because if you were to have abantu abazingela baphethiwe, then it is not going to work, because they are not there to help, they are there to feather their own nest.
Do you think then in that context the ANC is able to shield itself and insulate itself from the analysis that says, with this talk of reconfiguration, we are starting to see the proxy battles that have to do with the conference of the ANC, which is a good, 2 to 3 years still to come? 2 years, actually.
Yeah. No. It will be difficult because someone who does not want to take accountability, discipline, or anything else, even if it had nothing to do with the reconfiguration, is always going to use the next Congress and say we are being purged because we support this or that other leadership. I think it is important to act as and when it's necessary, but to be consistent in how you act. You don't act at one level and then not act on the other. So they won't avoid it. What will make them avoid it is if they show, as the process goes forward, that the situation has indeed changed and changed for the better. Let me give you an example. When Limpopo was dissolved, there were people who were saying they are being dissolved because they don't support the existing leadership. And of course, when they went to Mangaung, that played it out. But I think if you look at the province now, at least in terms of its leadership in the province, you can see that there have been real improvement. And if they did not act because people were saying, well, you're acting on us because we're going to put a different candidate,
right?
And we would not be where we are in Limpopo.
All right. Thank you for sharing your insights with me this morning. That's Mbazima Shilowa. He's the former Premier of Gauteng and the former General Secretary of COSATU, just giving some insights and analysis there on the proposed quote-unquote reconfiguration of the leadership structures in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, the structures of the ANC, that is. Let's check in with N. Musa now with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa has expressed concern over the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization. The newly inaugurated U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Monday that his country would leave the WHO. Independent economist Elise Kruger says inflation is expected to tick up slightly following a fuel price hike and an increase in other household expenses recorded in December last year. And President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will use its G20 presidency as a platform for taking cooperation and collaboration among leading economies to a new level. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Starting Joburg with super heavy backlogs on the N3. This is a jam between the Elands interchange and Marlborough Drive. They had an earlier breakdown and a collision scene between London Road and Marlborough Drive, and that's why it's so heavy. Give you an idea how heavy it is pushing traffic on the N12 and R24 routes back to their Edenvale exits because real problems getting off those routes through Galulis and into that severe backlog on the N3. Crash on the N14, the Krugersdorp Highway, just after the R55 Pretoria West exit. If you're on your way to Pretoria, that's quite a heavy queue. That's a high collision zone this time of morning, that one as well. And the R21 North is looking quite heavy, passing Tembisa up into the roadworks by Olifantsfontein Road. Durban, just make sure you've got plenty of time to get through the traffic this morning. It's all really heavy. An example of that is the M2. Queues from Toti right up to about Malazi, up to around the M4 split. Then from the M7 Bluff exit right through to Mgeni Road. That's your second big queue of traffic. The M19, we've been saying avoid it. There's a truck crash going out of Durban to Pinetown by Dunkeld Road. That's heavy. And the M19 to Durban is now closed because of a truck crash on the Durban back carriageway at Reservoir Hill. So all sorts of chaos on that M19. Bit of traffic at Cliffdale on your way to Pietermaritzburg as well today. Cape Town, crash R300 north before Van Riebeeck Road. That's heavy getting up from the Delft area towards Kales River. And everything just really quite busy. A busy midweek Wednesday in Cape Town. Again, just make sure you got time to get through. Particular concern, Durbanville and Brackenfell areas looking dreadfully slow. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you once again, Zai. So I see that the match was washed out with the MICT.
MICT, yes, MI Cape Town.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's your team. It could
That's
be good.
my team.
Yeah. I don't know if they win
I've
this.
never watched them, by the way. I just love their name. Mumbai Indians, Cape Town.
Mumbai Indians, Cape Town.
World in unity.
They could win the Thulas trophy by the looks of things. But yesterday, they had to split points with the Durban Super Giants. It was a rain-hit SA20 match at Kingsmead last night. MI Cape Town had a solid start with Ryan Rickleton and Rusty van der Dussen scoring quickly, but rain stopping play at 62 for the loss of 3 wickets in the 11th over. The game was eventually abandoned. MI Cape Town now sits second on the log, tied on 16 points with the Paarl Royals, while the Durban Super Giants, they lag behind at the bottom with just 8 points. Soccer news: Nigeria's under-17 women's national team coach Bankole Olowokere has expressed confidence in securing a victory against South Africa in their upcoming FIFA Women's Under-17 World Cup qualifier in March. While Nigeria received a bye in the first round of qualifiers, South Africa's Botswana defeated Gabon with a staggering 21 goals to 2 aggregate. Olowokere is set to introduce new faces to the squad for the two-legged qualifier, emphasizing development and international exposure.
Talking about South Africa and our squad, number one, you don't expect me to start exposing my strategy against South Africa, And one thing I want us to know is a developmental program. So it's not like the Bayana against the Super Falcon of this world, or even the Falconet to the under-20 side of the South Africa. That you can say, no, it's a complete developmental. So talking about the squad, probably maybe a few of them that are still within that age grade can still be part of it. But I tell you, I would love to have moved around to see some other new set of guests so that they too can get exposure. But if maybe we still have 1 or 2 of them that can still be of that.
Moving to Aston Villa, who missed a chance to all but secure a place in the Champions League knockouts. They were beaten 1-0 by Monaco. Raphinha scoring in stoppage time as Barcelona beat Benfica 5-4 in Lisbon. Liverpool had a 2-1 win over Lille, and Julian Alvarez scored in the 90th minute to lift Atletico Madrid 2-1 over Bayer Leverkusen. Tennis action: Madison Keys came from a set down to reach the semi-finals of the Australian Open, beating Ukraine's Elina Svitolina 3-6, 6-3, 6-4. The American 19-seed Keys is into the last 4 at Melbourne Park, where she will meet Iga Swiatek, who beat Emma Navarro this morning 6-1, 6-2. On to golf, and Karabo Mokoena carded a near perfect 6 under par 66 to take a 1-stroke lead after the opening round of the 10th Big Easy tournament, which is underway at the Observatory Golf Club. This 54-hole event is the last tournament of the regular season before the season-ending playoff, which is to be held at Killarney Country Club in February, and the final, which will be held at the Els Copperleaf in March. That's a wrap of your sport on the Morning Brief. More top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning once again in Dowling. So in this hour, we start with some M&A activity. Tell me about Hadaco and Isotech.
So the firm has agreed to purchase the trading assets and liabilities of Isotech, a leading South African provider of insulation materials, for about 709 million rand. The acquisition is part of Hudeco's diversification strategy and will complement its existing offerings in the electrical power transmission sector. Now, Isotech manufactures and distributes thermal and electrical insulation materials used in transformer and electrical motor manufacturing and repair. The company operates in 5 locations across the country, employs about 119 people, and generates about 500 million rand in annual revenue. Now, the acquisition price is based on the multiple of Isotech's average annual profit after tax over the 3 years following the effective date. Hudeco will fund the acquisition using internally generated cash, existing financial facilities, and, if necessary, new financing. Anthony Shanta, Isotech's current managing director and beneficial owner, will enter into a 3-year employment contract as part of the agreement. He has also agreed to a 5-year restraint of trade arrangement post-employment in favor of Hudeco. vehicle. The deal marks a strategic expansion into the electric insulation sector, reinforcing Judeco's market share and growth prospects in the country. The transaction is expected to be completed by the end of the first quarter.
And in sector and industry news, tell me about production in the mining sector. You're saying that it slipped in November.
That's right. Thulas mining production falling 0.9% on an annual basis in November. The gold sector was the primary contributor to this decline, with production there falling 11.5% year-on-year. This marks the 13th consecutive month of declines for the gold sector. Other sectors such as iron ore, coal, and diamonds also experienced declines in production, with decreases of 3.8%, 1.6%, and 11.4% respectively. But the PGM sector saw a 4% increase in production, which helped offset some of the decline. On a monthly basis, production fell 0.2% in November, following a 2.8% decline in October. Now, despite these declines, the Minerals Council South Africa remains optimistic about the sector's contribution to the country's GDP. The council noted that the mining sector's strong performance in the first 11 months of last year, with real mining production rising 0.6% compared to the same period in 2023. And that would likely result, of course, in a positive contribution to GDP for the fourth quarter.
All right, please give us another roundup of market activity.
Kicking things off in Asia, trade there quite choppy, with markets in China and Hong Kong in the red as the U.S. administration discusses a 10% tariff against China. The Hang Seng is down 1.3%, while the Shanghai index sheds 0.9%. In Wall Street, futures in the green following yesterday's upbeat close. Traders eyeing further commentary from Trump and earnings reports from some of the biggest companies in the U.S. And then coming back home, the JSE mixed, with the all-share closing yesterday's trading session 0.13% to the good. Not much trade taking place in the currency markets, with the rand remaining steady at 18.51 to the dollar this morning.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ndawling Lechela. Look out for one more update from Ndawling. That's coming up just after 8:30 here on The Morning Brief.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning. So this situation, let's start in the DRC. This situation around fighting there is concerning the M23 rebels making some gains.
Refreshing morning to that and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Indeed, Tula, since the beginning of the year, we have seen people being pushed out of their villages. We are talking here about 287,000 people who have been moved out of the eastern DRC. Now, the latest Tula this week was the capture of a town, Minova, which is very key to North Kivu in Goma. And now M23 has seized that town, Tulas, and the military, it is still saying that, I mean, they cannot confirm, but they are aware that there was a breakthrough in Minova by the M23, also known as March 23 movement. This is a group that is composed of ethnic Tutsi who have broken away from the Congolese army. But there is a say also to us that even South African military have trained this M23 when they were still in the military defense force of Congo. Now we have now breathed a dangerous movement that has been active to us since 2023. I mean, since 2013, and that is a concern to both the government of Felix Tshisekedi in Kinshasa.
Yeah, and tell me what's happening in Gabon. I see that the country has a new electoral law.
So this new electoral law, others have seen it that it will favor the current military leaders, including the cousin of Ali Bongo, General Bryce Oligui Nguema Tulas, that in a sense that they have allowed that they will allow members of security forces, judicial officers to contest elections as candidates. And what has been coming from opposition has been that they don't want members of the military to stand as presidential candidates. But it seems that this bill has been adopted to us, and it appears that General Bryce might be one of the candidates in these elections this year in 2025.
and the African Union trying to push for education and inserting it as a factor that contributes to peace during these interactions with the leadership of Somalia?
Absolutely, Tulas. Here you have an envoy, Elimani, who had an engagement with the Minister of Education and Culture and Higher Education in Mogadishu yesterday to look at the role of education. What then the role of education plays, Tulas, in fostering peace, stability, and sustainable development in Mogadishu. This is very important considering that the AU has a mission that has been being changed in terms of its focus, and that's how AU says that they will tackle both the challenges that are facing Somalia, but using what I'll call the soft power of education.
And closer to home in the Southern African region, the former president of Botswana, Ian Khama, we saw him around the election time doing a bit of dancing here and there, very animated. He had reason to do that. He's now back in Botswana and things are looking up for him.
Absolutely, Tulas. I say that he's bringing what I will call the Western governance and the African governance. Here he has been coronated in Montung Yabuhosi now as Kosi Yabangwatu. Now, what is important to us is that his return will now create a link of the traditional leadership structures in Botswana, how they will deal with the community development, preservation of the culture of the Botswana. Now, you can see that as a former president, he will now have to deal with the traditional courts, Tulas. He will no longer be dealing with parliament. He will be dealing with culture and horror of the people of Botswana.
Yeah. Lastly, then, Sipho, in your historical archives, take us back to 22 January 1984. What happened?
Tulas, it was almost 41 years ago, and this was one of the mass democratic movements during the apartheid days. The UDF launched the Million Signature Campaign to protest against the then apartheid and the government constitutional reforms. That signature campaign tool has just collected under 400,000 by October due to the police harassment and others are saying internal conflicts and also the challenge of leadership in UDF. But I don't think so, Tulas, because when you look at the numbers that they have done, this campaign was the best of its kind nationwide since 1960 and 1961 after Sharpeville Langa massacre. So we have to say kudos to the UDF members during that time, Tulas, who could take that campaign of fighting against the then apartheid government. Asante sana Tulas, as we're still in a conversation, SFM, observing the education month.
All right, Sipho, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mandula there with your Africa update here on the Morning Brief.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply. Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Let me very quickly, take one or two of your calls. Kirk in Cape Town, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about the ANC and restructuring of its leadership?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Yes, while I do want to comment on that. While the ANC is, it's natural for a post-election for there to be some sort of restructure, especially in light of their poor results or poor showing in the last election, it makes sense that they would restructure. However, I do think, or I suspect, that the restructure in Gauteng, I wonder whether it is a move to, with the recent spats between Fakile Mbulula and Lesufi, whether it is a move to put certain people back into line, especially in light of the GNU and Gauteng's reluctance to join or to toe the line, it appears, in the GNU negotiations for Gauteng.
I hear what you're saying.
I wonder whether that is the case.
Yeah, no, interesting take there. Thank you for that. That's Kirk in Cape Town. Let me take a call from Tando in the Eastern Cape. Good morning to you, Tando. You want to weigh in on Donald Trump?
You know, I used to call him political palooka the first time around.
and now I see vestiges of a Kardashian politician. He's not a politician.
Whoa, slow down.
He's not a politician per se.
What is a Kardashian politician?
He's a reality TV, what you might call. He's a reality TV, but he's a game changer somewhat. So when I look at him, he reminds me of Ronald Reagan, but now he's infused with Margaret Thatcher because they are so. What can I call them? They divide. They kind of but he's a mixture. But he's interesting in a sense that all focus is on him, and it doesn't kind of eliminate the dangerous kind of thing he's doing.
Sure.
But it's interesting in a sense that he's kind of rattled the land. They're shaking the boat, and so it's quite interesting what's going to happen.
Strap yourself in, Tando. It's going to be an interesting ride over the next few years. Thank you for that.
I can imagine. Sure, yeah.
That's Tando there in the Eastern Cape. Let me speak to Churchill, also in the Eastern Cape. Churchill, you want to talk to me about the ANC? Good morning.
Yes, Thulas. I wanted to talk about this reconfiguration. Yesterday we spent a lot of energy trying to discuss and understand what the SG was actually meaning.
Yes.
I think there's a problem with our leadership, especially our politicians in South Africa. They are so obsessed with politics of slogans, and people are very tired of that. You get down to the real issues. He could have explained exactly what they mean by that. Now, I don't know whether it's populism or what. We have to try and think, what could it be meaning? Because at the end of the day, when you're speaking, you are addressing the audience. The audience is the electorate. They need to understand exactly what the ANC is meaning. Now, all around, we're searching around.
In fairness to him, Churchill, do you not think that he could not say more? Because, one, arriving at the decision of calling it a reconfiguration was arduous in that it wasn't easy. They pulled in various directions until they settled on that. And two, it's still to be refined by the national officials working with the National Working Committee. So even he doesn't really know how to put it and say, what are we talking about here? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's been happening even previously. These big times, our people are very tired of the politics of slogans. Big words, slogans. Gotcha. They need action on the ground.
100%.
That's what people want now.
Thank you, Churchill. That's Churchill in the Eastern Cape there. We will continue to take your calls. Do call me. The number to dial 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes, we'll take those on 061 410 4107.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Joburg's N3 stays really heavy from Elan's interchange all the way through to Marlborough Drive. Very heavy up through Bedfordview, Galilee, Edenvale and passing Alex behind that N12 and R24. It's heavily jammed coming in from Echo and Eddie trying to get through Galilee's get into that N3 mess. A crash coming out of Toti this morning on your way to Durban. It's the N2, just around the M4 split. So the run up through Prospect and very heavy. The M19 closed and heavily disrupted between Dunkeld Road and Reservoir Hills, Mountbatten Drive. There are truck crashes on both sides. Just stay away from that. The M19 is jamming heavily and the alternative routes are so badly backed up. And of course on top of that there's rain. Cape Town this morning, earlier crash, R300 going north before Van Riebeek Road, still pushing traffic back to Delft, and a crash in front of Dunoon, slowing traffic on the N7 south between Malabongwe and Plattercliff Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
At Business Outsurance, ensuring your business is our business. Switch to Business Outsurance today, and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. Get affordable cover to protect your business against everyday risks. Get the best business insurance at the best price for your business. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
At 7 minutes to 8, let's turn our attention to this story. The Department of Correctional Services has announced that inmates who sat for the 2024 National Senior Certificate exams achieved a 96.2% pass rate. The department says 13 correctional schools attained 100% pass rate, and the results were celebrated at an event at the Johannesburg Correctional Center last week on Friday. So let me speak now to the National Commissioner of the Department of Correctional Services, and that's Makhoti Tobagale. Good morning, and thank you for your time. So this is quite a significant achievement. I mean, if you consider that about a decade ago, the pass rate in correctional facilities for inmates writing the senior certificate stood at what? About 69%. Now we're talking 96.2%. What's been behind the improvement in the results and the achievement of this pass rate?
Well, what is behind this type of performance is the dedication of the educators, is the partnership.
Commissioner? No, we seem to be having a bit of a challenge with that line to the Commissioner, the National Commissioner of the Department of Correctional Services. Let me see if we can dial him back and see if we can get him back while I tell you what the outcomes were. As I was saying, about a decade ago in 2014, they were looking at about 68.9% in terms of the pass rate in correctional facilities. We do have the Commissioner back on a better line. So, Commissioner, you were outlining the quality of teaching as one of the factors that contributed to this pass rate.
Yes, I was also indicating that we are offering extra classes, beyond the normal hours that the offenders are supposed to spend in class. We also do weekend classes. But what is also interesting is that year on year, we set targets. For instance, the number one school is the school in the Durban management area, Usetubeni, which got 100% pass rate and 100 all the offenders got bachelors. But they also set a target that for the 2024 matriculants, they also want to get distinctions, and they did achieve distinctions, 40 distinctions. So year on year, we set targets that improve on our performance.
What is your assessment of the value of offering this service, the ability to write metric exams? What does it do in the general disposition of the inmates, but also in your program of rehabilitation and preparing for reintegration into society?
In the first instance, the offenders that are going through basic education, that are going through training programs, that are doing, that are going through skills development programs, are well behaved. So what that means is that the other rehabilitation programs are not disrupted by their behavior. That's the first thing. The second thing, these offenders are able to plan for their release into community corrections, because they are now able to forecast as to what is it that they want to do in future after they would have served their sentence.
And is there follow through in terms of, I see that 104 inmates attained passes that open to study for bachelor's degrees. Is there follow through that says when they exit the correctional services system, what do they do with these passes and all these achievements, educational achievements?
There is follow through because, let's start with those that are in correctional facilities. For instance, yesterday I spent a day with the educators and the management at the management area. I also addressed the class of 2024 and the class of 2025. So with the class of 2024, there is a program to ensure that they further their studies or they continue in the training programs and skills development, because they after they've passed matric, they now have to go either the route of further education and training or the route of higher education. We do not pay their fees, so we help them to get funding. Some of our employees actually, put money together to assist them to register and all that. So we try.
Yeah.
And families come in. We have partnerships with business and those that can, help with donations for them to proceed.
Commissioner, let me just take advantage while I have you on the line. There was this briefing of the security cluster, and you were touching on various elements. The overcrowding situation in your facilities is quite dire, is it not? The figures are staggering. 156,000 inmates against a bed capacity of 105,000.
Yes, it is, and the problem now is that the increase, continues to affect how we operate correctional facilities. There's more demand on security. There's more demand on nutrition. There's more demand on healthcare services, psychological services, social welfare services. So it's a lot of pressure even on our own staff, because we have not been increasing numbers as compared to other security cluster departments like SAPS. We have not been getting special funding to employ more correctional services officials.
Sure, that's a concerning situation. Thank you for your time this morning. That's the National Commissioner of the Department of Correctional Services, Makhoti Tobakhale. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news. And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today, SMS CAR to 43187.
In our top stories, concerns following Trump's move to withdraw from the World Health Organization and Stats SA to release December CPI figures. Good morning. The Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa has expressed concern over the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization. U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Monday that his country would leave the WHO. He says the Global Health Agency has mishandled international health crises, including the COVID-19 pandemic. Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa's director, Professor Salim Abdul Karim, says Trump's executive order suggests the U.S. is relinquishing its leadership role in global health.
Anywhere you go in the world, they will treat you based on the World Health Organization guidelines. So the World Health Organization plays a major role in how patients are treated, in health policy, in controlling epidemics, and so on. By pulling out of the World Health Organization, the United States is saying that they no longer want to play a role in any form of leadership in global health, in how we are trying to make the world a healthier place.
Independent economist Elise Kruger says inflation is expected to tick up slightly following a fuel price hike and an increase in other household expenses recorded in December last year. Her comments come as Stats SA prepares to release the December inflation numbers this morning. Kruger explains what to expect.
Overall, it's a moderate increase in fuel prices, but also a high survey month. Thus, quarterly surveys for actual rentals, owner's equivalent rent, domestic worker wages, motor vehicle insurance, all of those will also impact on the number. Core inflation is forecast to tick up to 3.8% on an annual basis compared to 3.7% in November. December's numbers are likely to confirm that inflation remains well under control in South Africa. However, factors such as the recent depreciation of the rand exchange rate and upward pressure on the international oil price are factors that are likely to impact the outlook into 2025.
The following story has graphic details that may upset sensitive listeners, including children. The Judicial Conduct Tribunal, tasked with probing sexual harassment allegations against Judge President Selby Mbenenge, will this morning continue to cross-examine complainant Judge's Secretary Andiswa Mengo. Mengo has accused Mbenenge of sexual harassment in the form of in-person interaction and electronic communication. She will face tough questions over her evidence in chief. Yesterday, Mbenenge's counsel, Advocate Musisi Kakane, grilled Mengo on evidence which the respondent's counsel perceives to contradict the argument that the advances were unwanted.
Would you agree with me that your answer is as disgusting as the suggestion you were responding to? Yes. In fact, both of you were exchanging salacious, disgusting messages consensually. Yes.
Social media personality Musa Kahula will be back in the Randburg Magistrates Court in Johannesburg next Wednesday to apply for bail. He made a brief court appearance yesterday when his case was postponed. Kahula is facing charges of defamation of character, hate speech and contravention of the Cyber Crimes Act. It's alleged that Kahula, who has a huge social media following, posted derogatory statements impairing the dignity of businessman Zinqumalo in October last year. Kahula will remain in custody. The National Prosecuting Authority spokesperson, Pindim Jonondwane, says Kahula has other pending cases.
He has two pending cases, one in the Western Cape on a charge of murder, and a second one in Foshville, which is a case of reckless and negligent driving. So on that case of reckless and negligent driving, he is currently in custody as a warrant of arrest that was issued in Foshville.
And finally, President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will use its G20 presidency as a platform for taking cooperation and collaboration among leading economies to a new level. He says through its presidency, South Africa also aims to consolidate all G20 initiatives to support African countries. Ramaphosa says this will result in a flagship agreement for investment in productive sectors on the continent, particularly in infrastructure. He addressed the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
We seek investments in development of skills that will also fuel this infrastructure revolution, particularly for Africa's youth and the economic empowerment of the women of our continent. In the health sector, we would want the G20 to support the production of pharmaceutical products such as therapeutics as well as vaccines to deal with pandemics. The digitization of the continent, particularly when it comes to artificial intelligence, will enhance trade and development.
Recapping the top story, the Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa has expressed concern over the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today, SMS CAR to 43187.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy on the eastern side of Joburg this morning. A crash between London Road and Marlborough Drive. It's been with us a while. A couple of lanes are blocked. Very heavy. The traffic on the N3 queues from the Ilan's interchange deep in Germiston. And behind that, the N12 and R24 are now pushing back heavy queues. There's problems coming in from Ekurhuleni on those highways trying to get through Galulis and get into the N3 North, such as the backlog of enormous traffic flows there. N14 crash on your way to Pretoria, the Krugersdorp Highway after the R55. Pretoria West exit still causing delays. Avoid the M19 between New Germany, Claremont and Durban this morning. Truck crashes on both sides. There's a closure that's gone in on the Durban-bound carriageway at Dunkeld Road. It's very, very heavy on the alternative loop around through the rain as well. And then if you're going to Pinetown on the M19, there's a crash involving a truck at Dunkeld Road, and that's heavy from Reservoir Hills. Plenty of traffic on Durban's N2, Toti through to Umlazi, and then M7 through towards Genia Road. Let's take it easy around KZN and particularly Durban. Rain with us most of the day today. Cape Town crash on the N7 south after the Malabongwe exit at Dunoon, and the collision on the R300 northbound just before the Van Riebeeck Road exit, still causing a delay from Delft. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headline Soccer. Mamelodi Sundowns are seeking revenge tonight as they face Magesi FC at Peter Mokaba Stadium. And in athletics, the Comrades Marathon and Two Oceans record holder Gerda Steyn shares how she prioritizes her mental health. Details around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 8 on this Wednesday, we are into the third hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. It's good to be in your company this morning. Quite a number of conversations we've been having. We've been reflecting on some of the executive orders and decisions that have been taken by the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump, on day one, signing a slew of executive orders. Among them, the withdrawal of the United States from the World Health Organization. And I was saying earlier on the importance of the work that the WHO does in terms of pandemic preparedness and response to, health public health concerns around the world in countries including ours. Responses to, the recent Ebola outbreak in West Africa a few years ago. You saw the response to Mpox being coordinated through that, but also just diseases such as malaria. All of that, the withdrawal of the U.S. from the WHO. The U.S. has until now been the biggest contributor to the funding of the WHO. I'm told about 18% of its funding coming from the WHO. And I was asking the question, given the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, what he's been saying about the Panama Canal, etc., I've been saying to myself, what is your thinking around the re-election of Donald Trump? It's global implications now. Forget for a moment the best interests of Americans, because I've heard people reflecting on that. I'd love to hear what you think. The number to dial 086 000 2032. Send me WhatsApp voice notes to 061 410 4107. I'm also taking your reflections on the reconfiguration that the ANC is talking about of the leadership in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, as well as any other matters indeed that may be on your mind this morning. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Whether you're having a early, snoozy, tantrumy, chill, frustrating, or jokey morning, mornings love McDonald's, so choose happy and enjoy a Burry Burger Double and a short filter coffee for only R39.90 from 6 to 10:30 a.m. at McDonald's.
This new year, make it your goal to save on the insurance for your older car. With Outsurance Essential, you get up to 1 million rand liability cover. So if you cause an accident, the other car could be covered for up to 1 million rand. Add motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rand. SMS CAR to 43187. That's CAR to 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, let me take one or two of your calls as well as your WhatsApp voice notes that you've been sending this morning. Let me start with Faisal in the Eastern Cape. Good morning to you, Faisal. You want to talk to me about Donald Trump?
Name's Thulas. Yes, Thulas. Thulas is quite shocking and surprising. I hear mostly is the African people praising Trump. Trump is like a Ku Klux Klan, the triple K white supremacy. They belong in that group. He's a chaos. He's a disaster for the whole world. In any way, in all American presidents, they're almost the same. They're very stupid people. But one of the worst stupid person in America was Ronald Reagan. But Trump is worse than Ronald Reagan. It's surprising why people, it's really shocking that African people praising this man. It's only one thing, because he loves his country. I know what the people have in mind.
Yeah.
It's because of the hatred which again they got against the ANC. Now they're pushing that agenda. What disaster is this? Trump is a disaster. He's a disaster.
Gotcha.
How can who will place a person like if Trump is a Ku Klux Klan, is a worst right winger. You can never get a racist also.
All right, Faisal, thank you for
shocking.
that. I get the point you're making. Thank you. That's Faisal in the Eastern Cape. Let me take Eunice in Joburg as well, also on the issue of Trump. Good morning to you, Eunice.
Yeah, morning, Thulas. Thulas, talking of Donald Trump, I'm no fan of Joe Biden and never was, but for whatever he may have been, he at least sanctioned settler groups and settlers in the West Bank for having perpetrated violence against Palestinian farmers and there. Trump signed an executive order desanctioning those settler groups and settlers from any sort of criminality. And you could, just the day when the ceasefire was being on Sunday night, coming into effect, the night before that, settlers in the West Bank went on a rampage, burning Palestinian vehicles, attacking villages there, etc. That's in the West Bank. Now, Trump's choice of the United Nations representative there, Elise Stefanik, she's on record as saying that biblically the West Bank belongs to Israel. Now, how does that augur for peace in that region? I fail to understand that. That's besides Trump in his previous stint when he was president, signed over that the embassy must be shifted to Jerusalem elsewhere. Now, how is that going to, bring peace in that area? Or as much as he says that he's anti-war, he puts mechanisms in place for war to come into effect, if you know what I'm saying.
Eunice, gotcha. Thank you for that. And in fact, I was actually going to throw it at you, Eunice, that he says actually he is going to be a president of peace. There'll be no wars and he will end wars wherever he's got the ability to do that.
Morning to Thulasizwe and the SAFM team. I'm still shocked that the Americans were so ignorant and gullible to vote for Donald Trump. But anyways, it is what it is. But I actually think it's going to be interesting because we are going to see just how full of himself he really is and how he's going to stuff up everything every more. Em from Queenstown.
Hi, Thulasizwe, great show. Ben here from Joburg. Regarding the pass rate, besides all the initiatives that the Commission has said, isn't there a possibility now that the profile of the criminal has changed? Maybe we are getting a lot of clever criminals, that have potential to excel in life, but getting into crime. So the profile has changed, and therefore they're able to grasp issues of education and so on much quicker than 10 years ago when the profile was different. Thanks, bye.
Thank you for that. Speaking of education of inmates, I have this impression that many of them end up studying law. And I remember some years ago, I had some of them at one correctional center reaching out and basically saying that they wanted to take the case forward, and they were doing the work themselves, and they were doing all the papers and preparing for them, and these papers were proper. And it's fascinating to see. It is, of course, part of what we say as a society, that where possible, we would want to rehabilitate and reintegrate a person back into society after they've paid their debt to society. Sfiso in Durban, you want to talk to me about the reconfiguration of the ANC's leadership. Good morning.
Hi, Thulasizwe and the listeners.
Yes.
On the reconfiguration on my side, I remember back in the days at the shop floor when the companies will use clauses like we are we are downsizing or we are restructuring the company. I think in the case of the ANC, it's just more or less the same thing that they will be disbanded. It's just playing with words and trying to ease the pain from the people that will be affected.
Yeah, you think it's a euphemism for disbandment of these structures?
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me, Sfiso? All right, I think we lost Sfiso there, but we got the point that he's making, that he thinks it's a euphemism. It's nothing but a disbandment of the leadership structures. Temba in Heidelberg, good morning. You want to talk affirmative action this morning?
Yes, Brother Thulas, how are you, brother man?
I'm very well, how are you?
Cool, brother man. Yeah, brother man, I want to talk about this so-called affirmative action or transformation track, whatever the case may be. Yeah, brother man, in fact, I find this track to be so-called disturbing in
all right.
our society.
Temba, let's try and get you on a better line. We do seem to be battling with your line there. We're not hearing you clearly. That's Temba out in Heidelberg there. He wanted to talk about affirmative action, and he's using quite strong words in reference to affirmative action. Let's hope we can get him on a better line so we can better get the point that Temba is making.
Specsavers now looks after your hearing as well as your vision with Specsavers Audiology. With 60 stores and counting, we are South Africa's largest audiology group. For a limited time only, buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right. Buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. Find your nearest store at specsavers.co.za. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
All right, let's turn to this now. According to data from the online lending site Wonga, the festive season saw a sharp increase in spending, with the average expenditure rising by 20% to average 6,832 rand per person in 2024. The data also shows that fewer South Africans had saved for the holidays and more turned to credit to cover their expenses. According to experts, lower income earners specifically are overspending, leading to a dangerous reliance on debt. Let's bring into the conversation Somila Gogoba, who is the departmental manager at Milo Legal. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So, I mean, how do these figures stack up, the increased expenditure against the backdrop of not having saved up for the holidays? How do they stack up with what we know around this period, the festive season?
We actually can see that a lot of South Africans are actually overspending when it comes to the festive season. And now it's just an increase or an indication that a lot of people actually don't have the finances, or they are not privileged enough to have the finances to actually spend when it comes to the festive season. And now that's when you actually see the increases on the expenditure, and it's also shown within the lower earning customers, that because they don't have any money, then they rely on borrowing and using credit cards.
And that reliance on credit cards and borrowing, what are its implications in terms of the finances going into a new year? So specifically confining it to borrowing and debt for expenditure during the festive season, the implications going into the new year?
So now the implication is that they fall back into a debt trap. So now they find themselves having to borrow more to pay off the money that they actually borrowed in the previous year. Now they can't, because now they are living more than they need, and therefore now they need to get assistance. And now it's those implications of them actually finding themselves in financial stresses, finding themselves in debt traps, those are the ones where we then, as experts, are coming forward and say, come to debt mediation, come to professionals and seek for professional help, where we can actually are able to assess your expenses and see your debt and able to assist you, because the key is to focus on the repayment strategies to avoid falling into a debt trap.
So as a country, we generally don't have a good savings record, right? But even by those standards, only 26%, according to this data, only 26% saved for the holiday season, which was a drop from 36% in 2023. That is concerning, is it not? It has implications, I imagine. We're talking specifically about saving for the holiday, but I imagine that if you cascade that, it possibly has implications or is revealing of the levels of saving generally in the country.
100%, because that all goes back into the high cost of living. So now, what the stats is also showing is that the improvement or the raise of the high cost of living in South Africa has risen from 2023 to 2020, from 2019 to 2023, and now people were able to save better in the years before than now because of the high cost of living.
Sure. But we're not entirely helpless in this situation, are we, Somila? Share with us some of the practical debt recovery tips.
No, we're not, because now if we are looking at if South Africans can actually prioritize high interest debt, because remember, the more you don't pay your debt, especially that the ones that with high interest rates, the more interest rates accumulate on that debt, leaving you in a higher debt trap. And seeking professional assistance. If South Africans feel that their debts are unmanageable, consider debt mediation. Consider finding a qualified debt management expert who can negotiate with the creditors and create a repayment plan that fits within your budget. Create a budget for those who are able to manage it. Create a budget. Take stock of your finances, list them down, see what exactly you owe, and therefore there you can able to see which one you're able to close up first and which one you're able to then just make payment arrangements, keeping in mind the prioritizing of the high interest rate. Again, avoid new debt. It does not assist you to take out new debt to close off other debts. You're just accumulating more debt to put yourself in a debt trap.
Sage advice. Thank you for that. That's Somila Kokoba, who is the department manager at Milo Legal.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let me take one or two of your voice notes, and I'll also take a quick call before we get to the headlines.
Morning, Thulas. It's Chris in Camberton. I really call it a desecration of democracy. And it really shows that our democracy, and liberal democracy in particular, is really in trouble all over the world. Trump, as we know, represents a particular epoch. And what is also interesting is how he is fostering a very close relationship with business. And in South Africa, we've got a very bad experience of state capture, how business captured the states and ensure that it hollowed it out in cahoot with certain politicians. So it's going to be interesting, but it's a wake-up call for South Africans to really ensure that when they make their choices, political choices during elections, they do so responsibly.
But what a very weak assertion by the gentleman from Dodge City, because the conversation here is not whether we do have good interpreters. Rather, the conversation here is we cannot afford to have mediocre interpreters, because we're talking about people's lives here. So let's speak in Bombela.
Hey, I like the way the way you do a typically South African response when I say hi. I don't need to say anything more, but I get the point you are making. It should be a no-fail mission, because, as you say, it's a person's liberty in many instances that is at stake. And we have seen cases, as we were having the conversation yesterday, where, just the performance of the interpreter led to certain decisions by the court and the trials having to be redone all over again, etc., it does become something that is of concern. But as they say, they are prioritizing the professionalization of court interpreting as a profession. But I take the point that you are making. Let me take a call from John in Joburg. Good morning to you, John. ANC restructuring on your mind this morning.
Thulas, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thulas, I don't know if there's critical thinking that went into this analysis of the elections. Because to be honest, I doubt if both the leadership of ANC in Gauteng and KZN had anything to do with the slide in the election. We know that Gauteng, we've seen the slide is a long term. It's got nothing to do with local leadership. It's all have to do with the national politics. And if you look at KZN, you can't really blame that leadership for Jay-Z impact. But still, the national issue. And if you look at ANC, actually went down across the entire country, just obviously in KZN, you had a unique Jay-Z issue, which is not even because of the local leadership. And in Gauteng, it's a long-term slide. I mean, Gauteng, it's more sophisticated electorate that is actually influenced by what happens nationally, not what Banyaza. And if you look at when Jay-Z was the president, the leadership in Gauteng was very solid. But because they didn't like Jay-Z, the people in Gauteng, they still killed the ANC. That's when the slide started. So there's no critical thinking here. You can't really blame the local leadership for this. Or you should actually just restructure the entire ANC, because everywhere ANC went down. There's no critical thinking in that thing. The leadership of the ANC at national should actually restructure themselves.
John, thank you. Gotcha. And you're not the first one to say that. I've heard quite a few people that say, actually, if you are restructuring based on electoral performance, go all the way. But I don't know, John, also to reflect that from what we understand, this whole concept was debated at length within the ANC's leadership. So this is what they came up with. 8:30. Let's check in with N. Musa now with the latest news headlines.
Thanks, Thulas. Good morning. In the headlines, the Justice Department has expressed concern over the killing of witnesses in court precincts. This follows a brazen shooting at the Lenasia Magistrates Court in Johannesburg yesterday, which raised alarm about witness protection in South Africa. The Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa has expressed concern over the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization. U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Monday that his country would leave the WHO. And the Judicial Conduct Tribunal tasked with probing sexual harassment allegations against Judge President Selby Mbenenge will this morning continue to cross-examine complainant Judge's Secretary Andiswa Mengo. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Morning. Joburg's N3 stays very heavily backed up. We've had a series of obstructions between London Road and Marlborough Drive. Had a breakdown, then a crash, now another collision at London Road. So the N3 hasn't really got a chance to sort of release itself and move. So from Cement Factory up to London Road, very heavy enough to push the N12 and R24 route approaches coming in from Ekurhuleni, heavily back beyond their Edenvale exit. So major delays out that way. Crash on the Mike 1 South before Marlborough Drive, coming off the N1 through to Clewy to Sant, and that's heavy. And there's a breakdown on the M1 North near William Mandela, so the run through from Randburg stays fairly slow. M2 into Joburg from Benrose all the way through to Crown interchange, very heavy for this time of morning as well. Durban, the M19 remains the route you should be avoiding. It's closed going from Pinetown to Durban at Dunkeld Road, and there's a big crash going to Pinetown at Dunkeld Road. So there's a lot of traffic pressure on the M19, some delays and diversion disruptions as well. If you're thinking about the M13 as an alternative, just a heads up, that's heavy from Pinetown to Paradise Valley, and then Westville over the M2 bridge into Sherwood. Some really big traffic there. M2 up from Toti in towards Tweedy Hill stays busy as well. And Cape Town, the earlier crash on the R300 moving up towards Van Riebeek Road, that's cleared. Looks like something may have happened. N1 inbound, that's slow. Plattercliff down towards the N7 highway off-ramp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning once again. So Eskom was marking 300 days of no load shedding.
Yeah.
But I see Sundowns wants to go to Polokwane Peter Mokaba Stadium and do some load shedding on Magesi.
Yes, they do.
Turn down the switch. Fago Gesi for what?
Lights out for Magesi. Yeah, Magesi beat Sundowns. And could it happen again? I mean, I don't know. It's like, lightning striking the Brazilians twice. This is a much anticipated Betway Premiership clash, all happening at old Peter Mokaba Stadium. Sundowns facing Magesi FC. The Brazilians looking to maintain their lead at the top of the table. They are motivated by the memory of their shock defeat to Magesi in the Carling knockout final, while Sundowns have been in stellar form, securing a CAF Champions League quarterfinal spot over the weekend. Magesi, they sit at the bottom of the table, desperate for points to avoid relegation. Both teams needing a win for vastly different reasons. Kick off at 7:30 tonight. Now, cricket, Durban Super Giants and the MI Cape Town team split the points in a rain-hit SA20 match at Kingsmead last night. MI Cape Town had a solid start with Ryan Rickleton and Rassie van der Dissen scoring quickly, but rain stopped play. At 62 for the loss of 3 wickets in the 11th over, the game eventually abandoned. MI Cape Town now sits second on the log, tied on 16 points with the Paarl Royals, while the Durban Super Giants, they lag behind at the bottom with just 8 points. Tennis action, Poland's Iga Świątek defeated Emma Navarro 6-1, 6-2 to advance into the Australian Open semi-finals. Świątek will face Madison Keys next. In motorsport, Haas have appointed Laura Müller as the first woman race engineer in Formula One as part of a shake-up for their race operations team. The German will work with newly recruited driver Esteban Ocon, while another woman, Karin Kreidlich, is set to join as head of strategy from Red Bull's Racing Bulls team. US-based Haas are seeking to build on last season's 7th place in the Constructors' Championship with a new drivers lineup that features Ocon and Oliver Bierman. Müller has been promoted from her role as performance engineer. Now, a race engineer works closely with the driver on the setup and running of their car and is the main link between a driver and the team on track through radio communications. And finally, Comrades Marathon and Two Oceans record holder Gerda Steyn has emphasized the importance of seeking professional help to prevent mental health struggles. The 34-year-old shared insights on how she maintains her mental health challenges while offering practical tips to help others regain their footing during difficult times.
The best way to always have handled it has always been to remind myself why I started, to keep my head down when I work and not to let any performance, good or bad, faze me. And the best way also for me to always have dealt with that pressure is to keep myself within the running community, within the daily runner, in conversation with daily runners, join the local running clubs runs, still feel that part of camaraderie and not just see running as a job or as a burden, and still keep it as this social way of letting out of your emotions. After a hard day, you can just go and run and you feel better. That type of connection to running has always been what's kept my mind positive and what's kept me wanting to come back.
That's a wrap. I will be running out of here.
She's amazing, right?
Oh, she's amazing.
Absolutely amazing. Does it with a smile too.
I know. And I mean, if her mental health tips can help me run or jog as half as well, I'll take it. More sport on SFM around 12:30. With John Herika, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Hey, Ndauling, good morning once again. So it seems MTN in Nigeria has come a long way from the days when they used to have consistent troubles there. Now they are getting something of a boost from the government's hike in tariffs.
Somewhat of a boost, but hey, those troubles still sort of persist. So MTN, being Nigeria's largest mobile operator, has secured a long-awaited tariff hike with prices set to increase by up to 50%. Really a downside for consumers, but a welcome move for the mobile operator. Now, this move, approved by the Nigerian Communications Commission, marks the first tariff hike in over a decade and is expected to provide a much-needed boost to MTN's revenue. MTN had been lobbying for a tariff increase, citing rising operational costs and inflation. The company's CEO in that region, Carl Toriola, had highlighted the urgent need for a tariff adjustment, emphasizing that it would allow operators to enhance their services. With the approved hike, MTN plans to invest in expanding rural coverage and increasing 5G broadband penetration. Now, the tariff hike, a welcome relief for MTN, which has faced significant challenges in Nigeria, including a massive devaluation of the naira last year. The company's Nigerian unit has been technically insolvent, and the tariff hike is expected to help alleviate some of the financial pressure. While the approved hike is lower than MTN's requested 100%, the company is likely, of course, to welcome the increase as a step into the right direction.
And in news back home here, talk to me about Clicks and their expansion plans.
So they're ramping up their pharmacy expansion plans after overcoming regulatory hurdles that slowed growth last year. The group announced the opening of 11 new pharmacies in November and December with a target of 40 to 50 new locations in the 2025 financial year. Now, this accelerated expansion follows a challenging 2024 during which licensing delays and a legal dispute temporarily stalled pharmacy openings. According to a Business Day article, the issues arose from a constitutional court judgment that found Clicks' ownership of both pharmacies and Unicorn Pharmaceuticals violated the Pharmacy Act. Now, Clicks pharmacies contributed 27.5% to the group's total retail sales, increasing market share to 24.2%. Following the sale of Unicorn Pharmaceuticals, the Department of Health resumed issuing pharmacy license, enabling Clicks to renew their expansion efforts. The group has since been granted 27 new licenses. In addition to expanding its pharmacy network, Clicks plans to grow its specialized pharmacy brand, UniHealth, with 10 advanced 24-hour pharmacies featuring travel clinics. The expansion plans comes alongside a sales update. In the 20 weeks ended January 12th, Clicks reported an 8.1% increase in group turnover to 18.2 billion rand, driven by strong retail sales growth of 8.7%.
All right, lastly, Ndauling, just give us a sense of what we're looking at in the markets today.
Hey, it's another mixed day for the JSE.
Yeah.
In terms of local news, we're starting to see company reports and updates coming out. So this morning we have Mr. Price's update. Markets traders will be waking up to that. We also have inflation numbers out later today. An important figure, of course, that will likely influence the SARB's policy moves. That MPC meeting scheduled for next Thursday. A quiet start to the day on the currency front, though, with the rand pretty steady, trading at 18.51 against the dollar. And then over in the U.S., futures in the green, traders eyeing action out of the White House and earnings reports. Then over in Asia, stocks in for a mixed finish as traders assess potential tariffs on China.
Always with her eye on the money, that's Ndauling Lichela. She's kept you updated on business, economics, as well as the markets throughout the show this morning.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Let's look at perhaps the most common red flags that job seekers should be on the watch out for in order to avoid themselves falling victim to job scams.
First red flag I would advise people to look at is the upfront fees. In actual fact, anything that's related to you paying or there's a request for money. And we've seen so many people falling into scams of this, and this is one of the biggest scams that they use.
Lucas Mulefe, who is a cybersecurity consultant with ESET Southern Africa.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. All podcasts can be downloaded on safm.co.za. Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
Yeah, let's turn to this story now. Quite an important development, actually, in the public service. Government and public sector unions, which represent over 1.3 million public servants, are reportedly closer to a 5.5% wage increase agreement. The agreement will likely be finalized by the end of the month, we are told. Unions initially sought a 12% increase, but are reportedly willing to accept a 5.5% compromise. Let's hear it directly from them then. Let's bring into the conversation Ruben Maleka, who is the General Manager of the Public Service Association, the PSA. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So can you confirm that a deal and an agreement is imminent?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and good morning to the listeners of SAFM. Yes, indeed, the deal is imminent. You know that in the PSCBC, the employer was at 5%, and as trade unions were at 6%. So now we are in the middle of the process where we are at 5.5%. Is a final offer of the employer for the. Remember, this is a multi-term, and the outer years is inflation related, but there are also important factors which is called protection of the inflation, which means that if the inflation is below 4%, let's say it's at 2.9%, the employer will still give us 4%. And if it's above, it's also protected by 6%. So we are busy with the mandating process of our membership, with understanding that there are good developments of the resolution. One of the aspects that gives us courage about this resolution is one aspect that removes what we call the discrimination clause in the previous resolution, that if you resign from the public service after saving your housing, because currently each employee is allocated 1,748 as housing. Those who've got bonds, they receive that immediately. Those who do not have bonds and they've joined public service after that resolution, the whole amount will be saved into a saving scheme. But they are saying that money is only available when you are going to access the housing. Let's say you buy a house and you've been saving for 10 years, you receive all your money. So, but if you resign or you die you resign in the public service, you would lose that money. And we've been feeling that it's unfair. How could somebody who saves an amount of 1,748 for a period of, let's say, 10 years, would lose that money? So the employers now agreed that they would remove that clause because housing is not a public service problem. Yes. It's a societal problem. If you have saved 220,000 over a period of 10 years, you deserve that money. And now that resolution says, indeed, they agree with the proposal by Labour to say that even if you resign, you must get your money.
So run that by me once again, Ruben. So the current position, and until now, has been that if you don't have a mortgage bond, that money, that 1,784 and 55 cents, would be put in a fund, and you would only access it when you finally purchase a property and have a mortgage bond, and that you've done away with the part where if you resign from the civil service, you would not be entitled to this to that money.
Yes, indeed. That's a good development, and that is really what we appreciate, because it has been a thorn on our side, especially as the PSA, because we did not even sign that resolution before, because our fight was that it cannot be correct that if you resign, you lose the money that you have saved.
So what are the other elements that you seem to be finding common ground with government on? You've mentioned the increase in terms of the salaries, but also the issue around the housing subsidy. What about the other elements? I imagine that as you went into these negotiations, the increases around the contributions by employees to the government employees medical scheme would have also cropped up as well in the bargaining council. You would have brought them to the fore, I imagine.
Yeah, of course. We also managed, firstly, on the housing, to get that the employer must increase it immediately by 1 April to 1,900, and then on July, 1st July of the same year, 2025, it must also increase by inflation. So that's a good development for the housing, because we believe that many of our members are found in the middle of not being able to afford or being denied bond. But with these increases that are coming, we believe that it can come as a relief for many of our members to be able to access housing. Secondly, on the part of medical, we all know that at this point in time, the compulsory provision of members belonging to GEMS is a problem in the public service, because we anticipated that from time to time GEMS would increase its adjustment by medical price index. But this year it was worse. They've increased by 13%, and both labor and employer, the state as employer, we have actually condemned the act of GEMS. But we don't want to convolute the issues of negotiations with the conduct of GEMS, because that is a separate matter that we are going to deal with, because we still believe as trade unions and employers that what has transpired at GEMS needs separate attention. So we don't want to mix the negotiations with the conduct of GEMS. So we are going to deal with part of GEMS. However, at the current state, the employers also managed to increase the subsidy by medical price index plus 0.5% increase. So that also is going to put a caution on what GEMS has done to our members, and we're going to still deal with the part of GEMS and how they could get to 13%.
Ruben, thank you for your time this morning. That's Ruben Malika, who is the General Manager of the Public Service Association. So good to hear that there's progress in those negotiations and the parties seem to be finding one another.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Three really big queues around Gauteng this morning. One is the R21 leaving the airport heading towards Pretoria. The roadworks by Olifantsfontein pushed the queue all the way back through to the R25. So the run-up passing Tembisa, very heavy and perhaps heavier than it has been and heavier than you might be expecting. The N3 going north, a crash at London Road. That traffic stays heavy from Germiston, from Heldon East interchange. N12 and R24, it's in from Ekurhuleni to join the N3 via Giluli. So pretty heavily backed up. Crash on the Mike 1 south at Marlborough Drive, slowing traffic coming through the N1 Buccleuch towards Sandton. And at number 4, that's worth a mention this morning, it's been busy for a while, M2 from Benrose moving through downtown Joburg onto the Mike 1 North into Crown. Very heavy backlogging going on there. Durban's M19, still worth avoiding, closed, coming from New Germany towards Durban at Dunkeld Road. Heavy pressure on the local alternative. There's also a crash going out to Pinetown near Dunkeld Road, so delays that way as well. The M13, the obvious alternative right down to Pinetown, is heavily backed from St John's Avenue down towards N3 Paradise Valley, and then Westfield through to the construction on the N2 bridge. That's a heavy backlog on the M13 as well. The N2 leaving Amanzam Toti up towards Tweedy Hill stays busy on your way to Durban. And Cape Town, there's some real heavy pressure on the N1. There's an issue between the N7 and Sable Road. So coming off Plattercliff Hill towards town, busy, and then you pick up more traffic disruption through the Kubo interchange over the elevated freeway. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Outsurance has another random fact for you. In 1999, cooking oil cost about 4 Rand. Now it's about 37 Rand. Times have changed, but Outsurance could help you make ends meet with great car insurance savings. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754 to switch and save today. Let's hear how Lebo feels about saving 790 Rand a month on her 2023 Audi Q5.
I am very, very happy. I'm super happy. I can say go to Outsurance for you to be able to save more.
Heard about the Out bonus? After 3 consecutive years of not claiming, you'll get 10% of your paid premiums back in cash.
Outsurance looks for a reason to pay, not for a reason not to pay.
Why would you want to be with anyone else? SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
All SASA Gold cards will stop working on the 28th of February 2025. Replace yours today with the new Postbank Black Card at no cost. Join hundreds of thousands of grant beneficiaries already receiving their grants on their new Postbank Black Cards. For your convenience, you can collect your card at multiple locations nationwide. Card replacement points are at selected ShopRite Checkers, Pick n Pay and Boxer stores. To find a location near you, dial *120 *218 *3#. Don't wait. Upgrade your card today for free. Trusted by millions for 150 years. Postbank, your bank.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Yeah, let's make the most of the remaining minutes of the show. Let's talk. Let me speak to Bond in Gqeberha. Good morning to you, Bond. You want to talk to me about Donald Trump?
Yes, Tulas. Thank you very much. Trump is an international spoiler. Finish, Tulas. In 1823, when President Monroe became the president, he adopted what is called the Monroe Doctrine, which advocated that Europe was not going to interfere in American affairs and America was not going to interfere. That was changed, thankfully, in 1947 by President Truman, who adopted the Truman Doctrine, which advocated involvement of America in world affairs. That led to NATO, that Trump is against now or doesn't want to fund. So he's reversing the policies of the glorious presidents, predecessors before him. Also, what has to be highlighted, the hypocrisy in the world. This person was impeached twice and he was convicted. Yet no one is saying anything about that. We have got our own president that is vilified on a regular basis simply for hiding money in the cushions. This one is convicted. No one is saying anything about that because he's the head of the superpower. Finally, he's strong on immigration, whereas America, United States of America, was formed of immigrants. His family comes from Germany. His grandfather changed the surname Trump from Trump, D-R-U-M-P-F, to Trump. Do you understand? Yeah. So please, don't take them serious. If you take them seriously, you'll have a heart attack or then a stroke. Thank you very much.
Let me engage you before you don't go, please.
Okay.
Let me ask you though. Isn't he emboldened by the fact that he has the backing of such a large number of Americans? Is the issue not about the Americans parting ways with the history that you've given, the involvement of the U.S. in world affairs? Because it seems to me this is the mandate. They said we don't want to be involved in all of these issues. Focus on us.
Yes, that is the thing. That is, like manifestos of parties. That was his manifesto, and they voted it in overwhelmingly. But for these 4 years, they must bear the consequences of that.
All right.
Because the very concept of a family of nations was conceived by his predecessors. He's moving away from that, the family of nations.
All right. Thank you, Bond. Thank you for your engagement this morning. That's Bond out in Gqeberha. Let's listen to one or two of your voice notes now.
Hello, Thulasizwe. This is KM. Thulasizwe, Trump can withdraw from the WHO. It can be correct or not correct, because now what's happening with our leaders here in Africa, when they've been given the money, the funds to take care of the people who are sick, to take care of the diseases. Let us take an example of COVID-19 here in South Africa. There were allegations that people were actually squandering the money of COVID-19. 500 billion. What happened? Let us take ourselves to that memory lane. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. On a lighter note, Abantwana, these names are just getting ridiculous now. I think the creativity is not make sure, if I can put it that way. Abantwana, no.
I hear you. I know exactly what you're talking about. In case you missed it, that's the nickname for one of our soccer teams, one of our football teams. They're called Abantwana. I think it's the under 17. If I'm not mistaken, Zai will correct me. But yeah, I get what you're saying, that we've gotten carried away from Bafana, Banyana, Ama Glug. Now we're talking Abantwana, Amachita, Amachimbos, Amapogo, etc., etc. I get what you're saying. Let me take a call from Magdalene. Good morning to you, Magdalene, in Bloemfontein. You want to talk to me about Donald Trump?
Yes, morning, Thulasizwe and the listeners. Thulasizwe, I think sometimes you need to step aside in order to assess and observe and try by all means to evaluate, in order to come back with something which can be of concrete, constructive implementation. So Donald Trump, I think by the time he was aside, he had to do the homework and check what is it that supposed to be better for the Americans. That's what we need in South Africa. We need somebody who has who has been aside, assess, evaluate, and realize the need of the South Africans.
So having been at the coalface, step back for a moment, get a better view of what's needed, and then come back and...
that day,
who would that be in the South African context?
I think by yesterday's communication between EFF and Kenny Kunene. Yes, Kenny Kunene he was my prisoner. I know, and how did he came up? So sometimes you need to be in a cold face in order for you to feel it like a pine tree. Sure. A pine tree just fall. It doesn't fall actually, it just bends. Gotcha. When it wake up, when it stand up with better decision between EFF and Kenny Kunene. I understand that Kenny Kunene said Bahande Bonke, but I say illegal, all illegal foreign nationals for us to recruit ourselves.
All right, Magdalene, thank you for that. Thank you for those insights. Talking about Donald Trump there, saying that he's had 4 years of stepping back and perhaps he's got a better perspective of how to intervene in U.S. affairs to, quote unquote, make America great again. Let me take one or two other voice notes. Let's see.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. I'm just thinking about the article you had yesterday on the counterfeit condoms. I'm not sure what the quality of these would be, but we'll probably find out in about 9 months' time. I'm just hoping they're not anything like the ones that the government issued a few years ago, the ones with the instructions stapled through them. This is Charlie in Durban. Have a good day.
Yeah, I hear, and I heard that comment tongue-in-cheek about finding out in 9 months' time. But I mean, you do raise an important point, because the concern about these counterfeit condoms is the risks that they pose for exposure to STIs, HIV/AIDS, as well as unwanted pregnancies and the like. It really undermines our public health messaging, and so does what you are saying, where you're saying, I didn't see that, but if you're saying that the condoms were being given while they had been stapled through, I mean, that's not clever at all. I think that's the best that I can say, and that should not have happened. Thank you for that. Thank you for your engagement and for listening this morning, and thanks to the team that put it all together. The Talking Point with Kete Muhlahlana is up next here on SAFM after the news. And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident, and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS CAR to 43187.
In our top stories, Justice Department expresses concern over killing of witnesses, and Judicial Tribunal continue to probe allegations of sexual misconduct. Good morning. The Justice Department has expressed concern over the killing of witnesses in court precincts. This follows a brazen shooting at the Lenasia Magistrates Court in Johannesburg yesterday, which raised alarm about witness protection in South Africa. A witness scheduled to testify in a 2021 murder case was gunned down, sparking a massive police manhunt for the suspect. A similar attack took place in November 2023, when a key witness in a police torture trial was killed outside the Randburg Magistrates Court. Terence Manasseh is the department spokesperson.
This is concerning, and as the department and maybe as government in general, we condemn these acts. The taking of life cannot be condoned in any way. So the safety of the court users is of importance to us, and we are really concerned about the incidences. We are aware of the incident, and it's not an isolated one. We have experienced a number of them. As you are aware, the minister is fairly new in the portfolio, and as a priority, she wants to ensure a conducive environment for court processes to be held under.
The Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa has expressed concern over the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization. U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Monday that his country would leave the WHO. He says the Global Health Agency has mishandled international health crises, including the COVID-19 pandemic. CAPRISA Director Professor Salim Abdul Karim says Trump's executive order suggests the U.S. is relinquishing its leadership role in global health.
Anywhere you go in the world, they will treat you based on the World Health Organization guidelines. So the World Health Organization plays a major role in how patients are treated, in health policy, in controlling epidemics, and so on. By pulling out of the World Health Organization, the United States is saying that they no longer want to play a role in any form of leadership in global health, in how we are trying to make the world a healthier place.
The lawyer for alleged underworld gang boss Nafiz Modak says there is no evidence that the pinging of Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kinnear's cell phone was linked to his fatal shooting. Modak, who will be back in the Western Cape High Court today, is on trial on over 100 charges, including the murder of the top anti-gang unit detective. He's applying for charges against him to be dropped. Kinnear was investigating Modak when he was gunned down outside his home in September 2018. Modak's lawyer is Advocate Mohammed Bashiruddin Sabda.
If the pinging occurred as it did, but the shooter is completely oblivious to it and unaware of that pinging, it doesn't play a role in the murder at all. And it was a well-made concession by du Plessis that there is no link. There is no direct link. And we also know that, for example, there's various possibilities that arises. The shooter could have relied on his own, as Advocate Nel put it, physical observation. We don't know how long he was lurking in the street.
The Judicial Conduct Tribunal tasked with probing sexual harassment allegations against Judge President Selby Mbenenge will this morning continue to cross-examine complainant Judge's Secretary Andiswa Mengo. Mengo has accused Mbenenge of sexual harassment in the form of in-person interaction and electronic communication. She will face tough questions over her evidence in chief. Yesterday, Mbenenge's counsel, Advocate Muzi Sikakane, grilled Mengo on evidence which the Respondents' Council perceives to contradict the contention that the advances were unwanted.
Would you agree with me that your answer is as disgusting as the suggestion you were responding to? Yes. In fact, both of you were exchanging salacious, disgusting messages consensually. Yes.
And finally, the Recording Academy has announced that Trevor Noah will return as the host of the Grammys for the 5th consecutive year. Noah is also a current Grammy nominee for Best Comedy Album for Where Was I? The awards show is set to take place on the 2nd of next month. Recapping the top story, the Justice Department has expressed concern over the killing of witnesses in court precincts. This follows a brazen shooting at the Lenasia Magistrates Court in Johannesburg yesterday, which raised alarm about witness protection in South Africa. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today, SMS car to 43187.
The SAFM Plain Writing Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
It's the new year and time for new low-cost insurance on your older car with Outsurance Essential. With Outsurance Essential, accident claims are paid in cash, so you can choose the panel beater you want to use. You can even top it up with motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 Rand. SMS CAR to 43187. That's CAR to 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
The tough decisions we need today is not about the growth, successful growth story that we talk about, because in the places I go, the people don't see that growth. They don't experience that growth. They don't see any hope for them sharing in that growth. And that's the time bomb we're sitting on. There are 3 violent service delivery projects every day in this country. That's the reality. You think this bubble we're living here in Sandton will survive? How do we leverage the assets we have, put our people's needs in the center of that, and make the tough choices? We were in Addis, at the African Union headquarters, with 500 people from across Africa, most of them young. You know what their conversation is? We're sick and tired of talk and talk and talk. We need time frames. We need accountability, we need transparency, we need decisions that put the needs of the future, which are the young people, at the center. That's the conversation we're going to have. And I'm tired of these conferences and dialogues and damn green papers and white papers. We need accountability now. Let's start having the real conversation about what needs to happen in this country.
That's Jay Naidu, founding General Secretary of the Congress of South African Trade Unions and also an anti-apartheid activist and author. Tired of the talk, absolutely tired of the talk, and looking and ready for more of the action, more of the implementation. It's 10 after 9 o'clock. Welcome to the Talking Point. I'm Kathy Motlatlana. I'm with you until midday. Looking forward to being in your company as we lead conversations that move us. Well, coming up on the show today, we'll start with the open line, your national roundtable. I'll, of course, be taking your calls on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial. 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. That's where you can send your WhatsApp voice notes and text messages too. And of course, you're more than welcome to raise any matter of national interest that you may want to put on the table. I must tell you that the story that you heard in the news bulletin, in fact, it was the lead story now at 9 o'clock around the killing of this witness outside the Lenasia court yesterday, the Lenasia Magistrates Court. Just absolutely sent chills down my spine yesterday when it broke. It is an untenable situation where you have criminals who communicate a message in the way that they do. Nothing quite says that these individuals are not scared, like approaching witnesses point blank on the doorstep of justice, right? Because these courts are institutions and organizations of justice. So when you go to a courtroom, you are literally interfacing and interacting with justice. And for criminals to go on the doorstep of justice and shoot a man down in cold-blooded murder. And, you know, of course, they also tried to attack another witness who was part of this matter. These two individuals were both outside having a smoke, we understand. It is absolutely, one doesn't even have the words, because saying that it's a travesty of justice, it really doesn't put the point across. But I would say that it is an insult to the criminal justice system that something like this can happen. And there should be some things that we look at and we see them as an affront, right? And this is really one of those actions that is an affront to the work of police, is an affront to the work of those very magistrates, the work of the criminal justice system. And the danger, of course, is that the message it sends out as well, you know, if you're approached by police, if you are approached to be a witness in a matter, you'll need to think twice. I mean, all the other witnesses in this 2021 murder case, right? That's a story for another day, because it's 5 years on and only now is this matter set down for trial. Only now is that trial being heard. But the message it communicates to anybody else who may have information is that, well, come and try. Come and try it. Go to the court, go to the police, say something. We as the criminals are watching you. And there's nothing that the police are going to be able to do to protect you. It is incredibly frightening. And more, it paints a picture of the lack of value of those who are witnesses in this country, even those who are whistleblowers in this country. They just keep being ways of saying that when you take that step, also be prepared to walk it alone, because not enough is going to be done to actually protect you and to preserve your life. So I am incredibly worried about the state of affairs in our country, because yet again, it emphasizes the lack of rule of law, the fact that the criminals just sit and watch and do whatever they want when they have decided that that is the day that they're going to do it. And condolences, you know, to the man's family, his loved ones on his passing, and what a terrible way for him to have died. So we'll continue then the conversation on the talking point, and yeah, this is what I want to put on the national agenda this morning. Coming up in the second hour of the show for Citizens Corner, we'll be focusing on digital safety, particularly of children online. We know that oftentimes, this time of the year, parents are getting very overexcited, pictures of children all over the place. But what we also know is that children are spending more and more time online, and there is an increase in cyberbullying. So we'll be taking a look at practical steps on how to monitor online behavior, regulating phone usage, and also just trying to understand some of the behaviors of children online. That's a conversation we'll have in the second hour of the show. And then the final hour of the show, we'll be talking about an opportunity called the Just Energy Transition Skills Development Program. And it's a program being run by the African Women in Energy and Power, together with the U.S. Department of State Bureau of Energy Resources and Windrock International and SASL. And basically, they're funding energy entrepreneurs to come forward with their ideas and receive funding for that. So that's what you can expect expect in the final hour of the show. We'll tell you more about that program and how you can also stand in line to be one of those that participates. All right, it is the open line. It's your National Roundtable. I'm taking your calls 086 000 2032. The WhatsApp number 0614 104 107.
I feel great, I feel nice.
Kasha, what's the score? We're dwelling on the highest, the summer level. What are we? Uzalo. What's the score? No maswazi cause being a mama. Pefeni wants to kreta and get a kaya. It's the score on SABC Plus. Don't miss Uzalo at 8:30 weekdays only on SABC 1. Zanzi for sure.
These are the weekend shows on SAFM. Music of Africa with Shaylan Dikumana. The Jet Set Breakfast with Michelle Constant. Seasons with Khomotso KG Mweketsi. The Soundtrack of Your Life with Ernest Pillay. Weekend Soundowner Classics with Kutlwano Masote. Spotlight with Zai Khan. The Weekend with John Gerika. Rhythm of Africa with Shaylan Dikumana. This is SAFM.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, this morning we'll start in Tembisa. William, good morning.
Yes, how's it, my sister?
Good, go for it, William.
Well, man, I'm so concerned about the reconfiguration that Fugile Mbalula, the collective, are referring to say now we are going to reconfigure, of which you need to disband and reconfigure. But my question now, Kate, is one. In Gauteng, these people, their performance was not based on the leadership of ANC. There were many factors, of which others had to do with service delivery and electricity. Then my question is that, what informs you to dissolve this PEC while these factors were not attended to? At some point, Raiders was a failure at ESCOM, of which impacted where the learners, if you still remember, Katie, the learners were writing without electricity. Some could not study, of which they've been raising this thing. There were service delivery issues in Soweto, of which they were not attended to. So, but the PEC, why they are doing, but also maybe let me just touch on this one.
Okay, William, sorry, before you go on, you've said something that I want you to explain a little bit to me. You say that part of the failures of the ANC in Gauteng were not of their own making, but as a result of service delivery failures, right?
Correct.
Okay, but who has been in charge of the province?
Now, let me just explain, Oscar. Indeed, the ANC was in charge, but remember at some point we lost the municipalities, of which there was a coalition in Joburg which was not stable, which indeed as well had a negative impact towards the service delivery. If you remember, in Ekurhuleni at some point, DA as well as the EFF or whatsoever, they dissolved that municipality, they then voted others. So the stability was not well. Indeed, it negatively impacted in terms of service delivery in this, especially Ekurhuleni as well as Johannesburg, because that's where there've never been stability. But also remember, even if Johannesburg wanted a stable municipality, but if you do not have numbers, especially in these councils, unfortunately there's nothing you can do. So you then have to
but let's not be ahistorical, William. Let's not be ahistorical. Some of the failures that we're seeing in service delivery today, whether it's at a local government level or even at a provincial government level, and maybe let's stay with local government, where you're talking about the coalitions that have taken place. Those were municipalities and metropolitan municipalities where the ANC had an overwhelming majority for the greater part of our democracy. And so we cannot run away from the fact that voters moved away from the ANC because of those failures, because they wanted to see better services. So the idea of bad service delivery does not begin with coalition governments. It in fact precedes it.
Correct. Now, Katie, maybe let me just touch this thing. In Johannesburg, if you still remember, Panyaza tried by all means through the city power to come to these areas, especially in Ivory Park and Soweto, where people have been living without electricity for more than 6 months, so that they can fix the transformers. He did by all means to say, city power, come here and assist us as the province, because we've been trying by all means to talk to ESCOM, but they are not willing to come to the party. So I'm saying, indeed, there are some service delivery that are the result of the poor service delivery from the ANC government. But I'm saying this current PEC, it did whatever that was within their powers to ensure that they service the people of Gauteng. But unfortunately, there are certain things that were not within their powers. And in the councils, especially in the council, you remember I was at some point in Ekurhuleni, people could not vote for a certain budget because, EFF was fighting the ANC. My worry, it's on this PEC to say they tried their best to ensure that people of Gauteng, they get the service delivered. But I was saying this one, as well. I was saying, if you go back to the formulation of provincial government of provincial unity, indeed, there are people that say Gauteng defied the NEC in terms of formulating that government of provincial unity. But the demands that came from the DA, it was as if they are forming a coalition between them and the ANC, of which PEC said, no, that thing is not a coalition. If we want a government of provincial unity, we need to include all the parties. And I can tell you, the result of this dissolution, or whatever they call it, the English way, it's because Madam went to the NEC and said, we are being disrespected by this PEC. It has nothing to do with the performance of the PEC. I can tell you, Auske.
So effectively, then, you believe that the Gauteng PEC is being unfairly punished, is what you're saying?
I can tell you, as a member, as a branch member, I'm telling you, I wanted them to come to us. Auske, they always say, Amanda Semasebeni, they are lying, these people, because they're sitting comfortably in their offices. But the branches, we would have told them to say, but what you are doing, it's not, the PEC came to us during when it was difficult. They tried by all means. But dissolving them because maybe there are differences in their meetings, they need to be fair to us and say, we have differed with the PEC, they did not want to take this instruction. They shouldn't lie to the public and say it performed very bad. Bad how? They tried.
I guess the election results speak for themselves, William. You can't deny the outcome of the election results. So the point is that if voters were truly convinced by what you are saying, if they truly felt that, yes, you have ANC officials in the province that are working hard but just have these odds stacked up against them, they would have voted for the ANC. And the point is that they didn't.
Correct, Ausketi. Lastly, maybe before I waste your time, Ausketi, people who appointed the Ritas is not the provincial executive committee of the ANC. It's a national people who appoint. There's a board that has been appointed to do this thing. So which means, and I can tell you, Ausketi, you can call everybody. They will tell you in Gauteng that something that impacted to the result was load shedding.
Okay.
And I can tell you that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ausketi.
All right, William in Tembisa, let's leave it there. Yeah, load shedding, absolutely a big factor for many people, not only citizens but also those that are running businesses. It's a national problem. But whose doorstep must that now be put on? It's the very same ANC. And as long as there is a hypocrisy within the organization around when to call things out, when to not call them out, when to take action, when to not take action, accountability, the mixed messaging around what accountability is, what it should look like, then these kind of scenarios are going to keep repeating themselves. Because one morning it's collective accountability. The next morning, something else. There needs to be consistency. Mangaliso, you're in Gqeberha. Good morning.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
Mangaliso, go for it.
I'll try to be quick, Kathy. I wanted to just talk about Trump. One thing that we Africans have been complaining about for the longest time, rightfully so, has been the regime change wars waged by the U.S. and how they interfere in various governments in the world, particularly in Africa. Would that be correct?
How the regime change wars do what?
How regime change wars have been affecting Africa, particularly those waged by the U.S.
Okay, are you talking about examples such as?
Examples such as we can go back to the assassination of Patrice Lumumba.
Okay. Libya.
Yes, we can go to Libya, Gaddafi. The list is literally endless. So would that be that's correct, right? So here's a President Trump coming in to say, man, listen, I don't want to get my hands involved in those things, right? I'm not bothered with those things. Yet here we are busy listening and we are still complaining. So that one I don't understand that one. Maybe you can balance me there.
As in, we're still complaining about what, Mangaliso?
We are still complaining about Trump, and we are talking about Trump being a threat to democracy and Trump waging wars, when the evidence on the table is not there. The evidence is that his predecessors were the ones who waged multiple wars. Correct?
Look, I think that the sentiment about him being a threat to democracy is based largely on what is happening internally within the U.S., right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So regarding the threat to democracy again, it's interesting that let me maybe get your take. What do you make of President Biden pardoning his family 15 minutes before his term is due?
He's drawn a lot of scrutiny for that. And I mean, of course, I think it obviously was incredibly questionable that he went ahead and did that, right? Especially after he had said that he was not going to do it.
Yes. And this was 15 minutes before term is due.
Okay, so what's your point, Mangaliso?
My point is, one, the mischaracterization of Trump is my biggest point that I'm talking about, in fact. Because by every metric that is out there, and the data that is out there, he is not what, i.e., the narrative and the agendas that are being pushed out there. For example, he's been accused of being a racist, right? I've sent your producers a graphic that tells you the demographic breakdown of the people that voted for him. 1 in 3 black men voted for him. 1 in 2 Latino men voted for him. 1 in 2 Latino women voted for him. And 1 in 10 black women voted for him. So if this man is so racist, why are these people voting for him? I don't understand.
Okay. All right, Mangaliso, we're going to have to leave it there. Out in Gqeberha, talking about what he believes is a mischaracterization of the U.S. President Donald Trump. It's 9:30, time for your latest news headlines. It is the open line. I'm still taking your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes.
Good morning. In the headlines, police have arrested 2 suspects and confiscated drugs with an estimated street value of 4 million rand at a house in Mitchell's Plain on the Cape Flats. The Justice Department has expressed concern over the killing of witnesses in court precincts. This follows a brazen shooting at the Lenasia Magistrates Court in Johannesburg yesterday, which raised alarm about witness protection in South Africa. And the lawyer for alleged underworld gang boss Nafez Modak says there's no evidence that the pinging of Lieutenant Colonel Shalkanir's cell phone was linked to his fatal shooting. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Askis my family, man.
This F-bomb brought to you by Sanlam.
A 13th chick is most a 13th chick, nah? But stop going boss with the spending like the 14th and 15th check is still coming in the mail. Is this a party, ne?
Finances is not a dirty word. Let's talk about it, Mzansi. Find out how at livewithconfidence.co.za. Sanlam. Sanlam Life is a licensed life insurer, financial services and registered credit provider.
Kathy Motlatlana on SAFM.
Good morning, Katie, and the producer, and all the listeners of SAFM. Katie, I like to say this straight to the President. Mr. President, can you please put increase on that 370 because it's a very little. Yes, I know that you're trying by all means to fight the poverty, but 370 you can't do nothing with that money. It's very little. At least maybe if you can start by 1,000 rand, then it's gonna be fine. Because also you need to create more jobs, President, because their youth is not working, and some of them they have more qualifications, but they sit at home doing nothing. Hence, the crime is too much here in South Africa. Sia from Cape Town.
Hey, Kathy. The story of the killing of the witness, I just think that we are not doing enough to protect witnesses. My goodness, it's 2025. Why are you bringing the witness in court? Can't you even inform the court that we cannot transport this witness anywhere? We have to put him at a place of safety, and they should give their testimony in camera. We are just not doing enough. And I think police are also involved in this, because how did they know? The timing. It's really, the country is not doing enough. Thanks, it's Bongi here.
Morning, Katie. Some of South African citizens are not honest. They were lambasting Trump years ago. Now they are applauding Trump because they are spiting Ramaphosa. Regarding being a witness, whistleblower, or being in the forum, protecting your community is dangerous in South Africa, because this country has lawlessness, no accountability, jails, our university and hotels. So everybody is doing what he likes, just like the taxi industry, the political killings. Thank you, Kathy.
Good morning, Kathy, and your fellow listeners. This is Olake here at Kanizin. I would like to articulate the point regarding Judge Mbanenge. He's the bad influence to the society. He must be removed. He must be placed on special leave. I thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much for those WhatsApp voice notes. Yeah, look, I have to agree with part of the sentiment expressed on the issue of the witnesses and protection and the involvement of the police. I think more and more when we see the ways in which crime unfolds in some instances in our country, of course, we cannot run away from questions about the role that police officials play. And we can just go back to that story that broke 2 days ago of Tiger, right? That the now infamous kingpin or ringleader for who was running some of the syndicates, illegal mining syndicates underground. When you look at the details around how he managed to escape out of police custody, out of police hands, there's no way that happened without the involvement and the collusion of some police officers. And in fact, the police spokesperson, Atlenda Mate, alluded to as much when she spoke about the matter on SAFM. So there is a conversation to be had about the level of corruption within the South African Police Service and how that continues to compromise whatever work that it is that officials can do. So yes, why did the police not know that these witnesses' lives were in danger? Why did they not know that there would be an attack of sort that was being planned against these individuals' lives? Because these are the kind of things that they should concern themselves with. They should have been the first to pick up that intelligence, not only step in and conduct a manhunt after the fact. How many people are police searching? How many criminals are police searching for today? How many are they searching for today? And realistically, how many will they find? So I absolutely have to agree with that sentiment. Let me go to the Eastern Cape. Olani, good morning.
Happy New Year. I know it's already late. Kathy. But,
way too late, Olani. Way too late.
Yeah, no, I understand. But I've been listening. Don't worry. I've been listening.
Wonderful.
Okay. Kathy, two things. One is about the issue. We just need South Africans. I'm just trying to, for the disbandment of the PECs and the gentleman that called complaining and trying to pass the buck to many people. It comes back to one thing. We as the majority do not vote for any individual of the people that are leading us. We only vote for political parties. It ends there. The name, that is the name of the political party, whether it's Inkatha Freedom Party or any other party, you just vote for the party. Who gets there and all that, it's certain individuals that are then put together. It's like me supporting Orlando Pirates. I don't know what else is happening inside other than just to trust and believe what they do, but I don't have direct influence until the system changes, wherein that we, even at branch level, that the majority of the people in the areas where they live, they literally vote for the people in that space. But as it stands, nobody votes for the majority votes for the people that end up leading in the places where they are in the political space in South Africa. That is what we need to know. Nobody voted for, like us, you didn't vote, nobody voted for the president to be the president. It was those individuals who were there in parliament who did that, not us. But
and
the other,
you know, Xolani, do you get a sense that if we just think back to, let's say, 5 years ago, when the Constitutional Court basically gave that order that our elections process should be reviewed and we should look at how our electoral officials are actually how they come into office. There was a big sense of momentum, you know, around that issue, and South Africans really wanting to see that change and that reform. But one certainly doesn't get the sense today that there is still that feeling overwhelmingly among South Africans that we need to change our electoral system.
it will happen after, according to research, it will happen after 40 years of what we call, that is from 1994. We still need 40 years to come and pass, because there's a certain generation that needs to die, and then it doesn't become part of the new changes that are happening. That's what research always, if you research and look at the countries that have grown, there's a certain group that needs to not to be part. For as long as we still have them, unfortunately, we're still going to have resistance, and they still have the authority, because they use both emotions and some they use facts, and those facts can drive emotions for things not to work the way things are supposed to work at the moment.
It does also feel that we as voters and as the electorate are captured by the political party system. We like it. You know, we like the machinations of political parties. We like the drama that goes on, the ups and the downs, and, you know, wearing particular political party colors.
Otherwise, it's actually lack of knowledge, Kathy, that drives that. Because when the majority do not have the knowledge, the chosen few will manipulate the system for their own gain, and use semantics and all that to gain those who've got limited knowledge. That's what is currently happening at the moment in South Africa. You've got limited people who know, and very few who, and then many who do not understand and claim and think that they know. That's what is causing the whole havoc. But moving forward, Kathy, I think what South Africa needs to do going forward is to look at the way we are educating the youngsters. If we want to see change, there are things that are needed at grassroots level, that is at grade level, that is from R to grade 12. The things that are done at governmental departments, at administration level, there are certain subjects that need to be introduced in that space. True life orientation. I shared this when KG was standing for you at the time, that the PFMA and the MFMA need to be introduced into the grade level, so that those who are mostly employed now with grade 12, they will have some basic understanding of what to do when they get into the government department and work in that space.
All right, Tholani, thanks for that input out in the Eastern Cape. France, you are in Centurion. Good morning.
Morning, Casey. How are you?
Good. Go for it, France.
I think I know you are very good.
Yes, you know exactly what you did wrong, but let's go. Let's go on.
My point is, I think Gauteng ANC must be dissolved. I mean, the service delivery is very poor and bad. I mean, I'm very happy because people lately are very clever. They don't protest. They don't play toy anymore. They just vote you out. That's what they do. I mean, the PRASA has been collapsed by ANC. I mean, I've been using a train before. I've been using a train and it is no longer there because of PRASA, the Dudumweni, this AD something solely. The guy that was given tender at Hammanskraal site, everywhere. It's ANC. The failed project. I hear it from the mouth of Lusufi. He said we have a lot of failed projects. The BEE ANC appointees, they never finish their project. These service deliveries, people are clever lately. They don't just vote you. They follow what you are doing to them. They follow the services. I'm happy South Africans are very, very clever lately. If you don't serve us, we don't vote for you. That's what I like. And yeah, I mean.
And France, I think, sorry to come in there, but I think that one of the other issues perhaps to look at is, the extent to which, as you're saying, it takes a lot more to convince voters than it did before. So you might have very good PR, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people are convinced about your messaging or that they necessarily believe what you are saying.
No, people rely on the message, but I mean, then they forget that the end product, the services. I mean, you go to the hospital building there, the ANC, BEE appointees, they don't do their job, and they don't do. I mean, all the project. Go to Eastern Cape, the same thing is happening. I mean, they don't know. I mean, there are failed projects all over, everywhere. Yeah, there are no maintenance, nothing. And then what do they think? What do they expect? They expect me to vote for them after this? No way, never, never again.
Okay.
Thank you and bye.
All right, France. France there saying that the ANC in Gauteng then should go ahead and be dissolved. But I guess part of the shock, and I understand where William is coming from, our first caller that raised this issue, is that for all intents and purposes, if you look at the media coverage, if you look at the ability to generate stories around individuals and around work, the Premier of Gauteng, the current Premier of Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, did that very well. I think which is part of why it was also such a shock that they not only got the votes that they did, but that they were so much lower than even the worst case scenario, than even the worst case projections. So lots of lessons, I believe, to take from that as well. That headlines, being in the news, is not a reflection of how you will fare in the elections. Nhlanhla, you're out in KZN. Good morning.
Good morning, my sister Kate. How are you?
Go for it, Nhlanhla. Well.
My sister Kate, you see, before I get to my point, Solan is right. Solan is so right about the problem of us South Africans. Most of us tend to vote. We don't know anything about politics. We just follow the people who just come to us just because they've got the same skin color with ours, and then we jump and say, yeah, we will support you. At the end of the day, they don't come back to us and save us with the same promises that they made when they were campaigning. And it's about time as Africans to look at ourselves and decide whether we still want to support our African politicians who are incompetent, corrupt, and using apartheid as a scapegoat to mislead us, so that they can be the same apartheid oppressors to us. Because that is what the ANC have been doing all along. My sister, coming to my point, the issue of inequality in this country, it is being promoted by the ANC. When you look at the inequality outside the labor market, not within the labor market, because most of the time we tend to focus on the side of inequality within the labor market. When you look the inequalities outside the labor market, we look at issues like training and education, of which is the responsibility of the government. Distribution of assets, land, housing, medical care, and transport. The responsibility of the government. Distance of work from residential areas. It's a responsibility of government to ensure that people get to work where they live close to. Division of labor within the household. Negative of effects on social balance and cohesion on families and individuals. The contribution to income and social unrest. The prevention of growth of the mixed class within, which has in turn stunted domestic demand and human resource development. Inequalities which has been promoted by the same African politicians who we claim we so love and all that. ANC. When are they going to address these inequalities? Before they get to come and say we promote inequality on media, but the same Ramaphosa is so full to reach, 75 billionaire rich men, benefited from all the corruption. It's so wealthy, but it's leaving the poorest people in. People in this country are dying out of poverty. What justifies that inequality among black people?
Nhlanhla, we'll leave it there this morning. And I think you've articulated it so well, the ways in which inequality affects so many different areas of our lives. And it's not just limited to the economics, but it is also political, it is also social. And yes, we also have to start being honest with ourselves about the extent to which our